Mike. Yeah.
All right.
I will call to order the meeting of the Minturn Town Council, Wednesday, November 19th, 2025. Let's start with roll call, please.
Brian here.
Tom here.
Steve here.
And Eric here. I think Kate is Kate on her way, or
I don't know,
okay.
but maybe the door. Mike,
I'm here. Yes, I am here.
Well, I was here. But Mike Sawyer's on his way. Got stuck with him.
Jumping on Earl. All right, let's stand for Pledge of Allegiance.
By the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. And anybody want to pull anything from the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Gusty and Tom. And any changes to the regular agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the regular agenda as presented.
Second.
Gusty and Tom again. All right, any declarations or conflicts of interest tonight? Seeing none. We'll move on to public comment. Anybody in the audience that would like to speak on anything that is not on the regular agenda, but you can talk about the consent agenda, you're welcome to take the stand, or any raised hands online. All right, seeing none, I will close public comment. And council and committee reports.
Sorry, Eric, I just wanted to interject that it looks like Kate is joining via Zoom, so.
Excellent. Thank you.
I don't have anything. Other reports. Monday, we had a High Five Media board meeting. Main discussion was fundraising, and since Colorado Gives Day is basically running now until you could even do it until after the first of the year. I'd just highly recommend everybody look at High Five Access Media. They do so much for our community, and it's a great organization, and any support would be greatly appreciated.
Perfect. I don't have anything. Kate or Earl, do either of you guys have any? Nothing. All right. Perfect. Moving right along to manager's report.
Any questions on the report that was sent? From anybody on council?
I like the pictures.
Look good. Good job putting that together too. You're real informative.
Thank you. We know that there's been some Amazon delivery issues as Amazon starts delivering packages themselves. I think that me and Cindy's recommendation is to start using a physical address for shipping and see how that goes, because they're mostly going to residents. If we notice that they're sitting in the hallway or outside, like, we'll try our best to bring them in as I did last night, but that's kind of what's going on there. We're still working on negotiations for the sidewalk project and doing a remobilization in the spring that didn't get finished. So there should be something in the next 2 to 4 weeks. I'll come back to you. I do want to let you know that Director Martinez and his crew were out there today. They stepped up and probably saved the town somewhere over $20,000. I don't have the exact number. I was trying to get it. By doing the project cleanup and the winterization ourselves, we decided we could just do it in-house, save money, not pay the contractor. So that's what they're doing out there today. Appreciate that. Uniforms for Public Works. We finally, we're kind of doing that in-house because it's a lot cheaper. These are some, we got them some new safety vests with the decal. These are like $1, $2, and then I just got a press, so it's a lot cheaper. And try to keep them looking decent out there. We got some of these. So we're so small that if you try to order, when you try to order like custom branding, your unit cost just gets way too high. So there's that, and then we did get the newer flags that are just quite a bit more quality, but the unit cost doesn't really rise. So they're like 3-ply. And we have the 3-ply, the older versions on the streetlights. So finally got those in. We've had some interest in that, so that's cool. And then I think that's about it.
Yeah. All right. In that case, moving right along to special presentations. First up, we got Proclamation Eagle County Gives Colorado Day, or Colorado Gives Day.
When I talked to them, they said that Daryl Wiegert was going to be here. He isn't here. But we can go on and if they come in, then they can do that. Otherwise, we can approve the proclamation now and do it again if we need to.
Any preference?
Just prove it to him.
All right. We can,
Move along pretty quick. Maybe he's just not here yet.
Okay.
That's a meeting, but yeah, we can.
We're gonna approve.
Usually it gets read.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody reads it.
well, how about
The whole parking get with it.
Yeah.
There was. Would you like me to do that? Or-
Yes, we do.
Yeah, go for it. I do a lot of reading aloud these days. Proclamation of the Town of Minturn, Colorado Gives Day. Whereas charitable giving in Eagle County, Colorado is critical to providing support that local nonprofit organizations need to make our community a desirable place to live. And whereas research shows an increase in online giving both locally and nationally, and many believe is the future of philanthropy. And whereas Colorado Gives Foundation and First Bank have partnered in an effort to increase charitable giving in our community through the online giving initiative Colorado Gives Day. And whereas Colorado Gives Day in 2024 raised $54.8 million statewide in a single 24-hour period via online donations and $1.47 million to Eagle County nonprofits via 4,645 individual donations at EagleCountyColoradoGives.org, a website allowing donors to direct their contributions to one or more of the 55 local Eagle County charities featured on the site, making it an ideal resource for facilitating charitable giving to our locally based nonprofit organizations. Whereas Colorado Gives Day is Tuesday, December 9th this year, and all citizens are encouraged to participate because all donations, large or small, can make a difference to nonprofits in need. Do you want to do the
perfect? Yeah, I'll do that. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by Mayor Pro Tem Eric Godhoff and the Town Council of the Town of Minturn, Colorado, that Tuesday, December 9th, 2025 will be known as Colorado Gives Day in our community.
That call back, hoorah.
Okay. Yeah, good. That's a great thing. Perfect. And yeah, if they come in, we can say a couple words, but otherwise we'll move on to VVMTA bike park updates, funding request.
Thank you all. Let me see. It's in, or someone promoted me as a. I was going to share the presentation from my screen. I'm going via Zoom too, or if you were able to pull it up here. I don't know the best option.
Yeah, Cindy can make you a presenter, and then you can just read it.
Yeah, I just approved you, but I'm also happy to share the presentation as well.
Whatever you want to do.
There we go. I got it. Great. So first, thank you all for having me here. I'm sorry, there's just a lot of things going on here. Trying to get it formatted so you can see it. My name is Ernest Sager. I'm the executive director of the VVMTA. You all have seen me here before, I believe, over a number of years, most of you. Thanks for having us back here to talk about some projects for 2026 that we see as benefits here to the town and to the bike park and to our trails and our public lands as well. The Minturn Bike Park, first of all, I want to say thank you all for continuing to support it. Sammy's going to talk a little bit more about the skills area that we were able to implement out there this year and what we're looking at here in the future. But it's amazing that it's been 6 years since that was opened, and use continues to be pretty significant. We're still seeing over 25,000 uses in a season out there. Lots of families, kids having birthday parties, Cycle Effect, our solar program, jump jams, dual slaloms, GoPro mountain games. There's a lot going on in that big bike park. It's really, really cool to see, and just very much value the partnership and the collaboration from the town to help make that bike park come to fruition. But I wanted to just first come up, stand here and say thanks, and then let Sammy jump into a little bit more of the bike park stuff, and then I'll talk about some trail stuff. Oh.
Well, thanks y'all for having us again. It was maybe a year ago this time when I had the opportunity to present in front of y'all about the projects that we completed in part this year and the ones that we're hoping to continue working on in 2026. So just to give you a brief update, this was what we were able to accomplish this year. Town of Minturn approved $35,000 last year for us to we presented in regards to jump improvements and the skills area. Of the $60,000 that we asked for, we approved 35, and we, based on what we heard the need from the community, we prioritized this skills area project. I'm personally thrilled with how it came out. It was a super fun project to take on. I think it came out really excellent. We're 90% done. We have one additional feature. There's 7 that are completed, and an 8th one that's in production that'll be here in the spring next year that will be installed early in the spring. But just to give you an idea, if anybody hasn't had a chance to see it yet, it's in the corner of the bike park where our shed used to be located. Big shout out to Director Martinez on that subject. Really incredibly helpful in getting a lot of this done. So we were able to relocate our shed and regrade the whole area there, and move some of the trails that existed, and we were able to complete this skills area, which I think is a huge asset for the bike park. So thanks for helping make that happen. Just wanted to give an update into the progress there. If you haven't been out to check it out, please do. Bike park is closed for the season as of this past Monday, so maybe next year. But and looking forward to next year, we're hoping to continue on this path of capital improvements. So the initial ask was for 60,000 last year. As I mentioned, we got 35, so we're coming back to try to tackle this jump and pump track improvements project that we were hoping to attack as a lump sum, but works as a phased approach as well. So yeah, we're the jumps. The bike park has been just 6 years now, so these jumps have held up. They're also 6 years old. They're kind of weathered. They're made of dirt. So what we're hoping to do is do a bit of a refresh, improving what exists already and adding some additional kind of freshen things up. A couple of new options here and there, kind of breathe a little bit of fresh life into the jump area of the pump track or of the bike park. So yeah, that's what we're hoping to accomplish.
I think you kind of skip through too a little bit the shade structure.
Oh yeah.
If you can go back, like
absolutely,
not just new features. There's a
deal. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, so we had a couple posts fabricated and installed a shade sail, which you might be able to see kind of next to where the truck is parked there. It was only installed briefly before it was the end of the season and it was time to take it down, but it was up for about 2 weeks. So yeah, it's not just a new section of the park. It's a little bit of freshen in general. So kind of a whole new space to hang out. And there's a fence that separates it from the parking lot. The goal was to make a safe space for young kids. So you're kind of segmented from the parking lot. We also added in a new designated path that provides safe access from the original shade structure to this new shade structure. So there's a nice safe way for the younger kids to be able to go back and forth without having to access through the parking lot. So all right. So Ernest has a few things in regards to our crews for the coming season, so I'll pass it back over to him.
Thanks, Sammy. First, I'll say I know we're probably a little bit late on this request in terms of your budget process, so I apologize for that. But nonetheless, I wanted to be here to ask, just in the essence of what is unfortunately continuing with our federal partners, the U.S. Forest Service specifically, and how we're trying to continue to support the gaps that exist with staffing and resources and bandwidth shortages on the Forest Service side. We've always supported the Forest Service. It's always been our goal to support them, not be the Forest Service. But more and more, we continue to step into a needed role to help take on and tackle maintenance and stewardship projects that are right here connected to town and our greater community. And I've gone to a number of different towns and councils, not only Minturn here, to ask for funding to support our crews to help fill those gaps and take on these projects. So it's not just Minturn I'm asking here for additional funding to support our crew, but this is our trail conservation and stewardship crew, which has existed now for 5 years. It's our paid full-time seasonal trail crew. We had 6 full-time. In addition, we had a 14 person youth corps this year for a month, paid youth 16 to 18-year-olds here locally that were out doing projects. And these were some of the samples of the projects that we're doing out here on the trails. We just installed new maps around the Meadow Mountain and Grouse Trail system right at the end of the year to help people know where they're going. That's a trail build of Full Nelson Trail with a mini excavator that our crew did. Clearing hundreds of trees, a lot of them around Minturn, Game Creek, Cougar Ridge, Grouse area, Meadow Mountain, Evercrisp, 2 elk, all across the board. As well as that's barbed wire fence being removed from the Grouse and Meadow Mountain area. And additionally, I know it's on your agenda later today, the shooting range. We had our trail conservation crew lead our youth corps out at the shooting range this summer, cleaning up spent shell casings. They sanded all the picnic tables and restained them as well. And then lastly, we pretty much replaced the bridge on Half Nelson Trail over in the Grouse system this summer as well. So a lot of work already being done in the Minturn area by our crews, and even more work coming in the future years with the staffing issues that the Forest Service is facing, and sounds like will continue in the foreseeable future. We are only planning on more than probably almost doubling our crew next year and doing more than, as you can see, just trail work, but also stewardship work, helping with cleanup, garbage, maintenance, tied to recreation, our public lands, and what we love and value here. So the ask is general support for us to help maintain our crews, build them up, continue to do this work. Because Forest Service was also a strong funding partner of ours, and that funding is going away to help support this crew. So we're going and asking for support from our community to continue doing this work and helping to fill those gaps. So that's what this request is. And before I move on to another one, I'll just ask if there's questions on that right now or not. But
what was our plan on most of this year?
Well, there's a line item under special projects specifically to the bike park jumps. There was no general operating support. There's also a line item for ongoing bike park
maintenance.
Yeah, specific to the bike park, but there's nothing going to general operating for.
There's a couple of things. There is, and I don't have it in front of me. There is a management fee. There is some capital in the 06 fund, the capital fund. The management fee is in the general fund. And then it seems like there's another 15 grand that I'm missing, but I know there's quite a bit in there.
There's really 2. There's the maintenance side of it, which is our annual support from the town to be out there to manage the bike park, do the maintenance, do all the signage, general opening, cleanup, ongoing maintenance, volunteer projects. Keeping it open and running is that maintenance, which I believe this year then I think is in the budget is $20,000. Then there is what Sammy mentioned, a kind of a capital ask to improve the jump lines and the pump track. So that's a one-time ask. And then after the skills area this year, the jump lines, what we're asking for, and the pump track next year, we're back to just regular maintenance for the foreseeable future. And that's the end of that capital, program or request. We're 6 years into the bike park. We want to give it a refresh and upgrade, and then we'll go back to just maintaining what we have and those improvements for the foreseeable future after, if this capital improvement works out. So
all that support is restricted funding on the
yes,
organization side to the bike park, so none of that can be spent on any of these things. Can you talk about like what the hole we're staring at for next year might be in terms of like what you're trying to fill?
in regards to our crews, is what you're saying? Well, from what I understand, the Forest Service is not going to be able to hire seasonal staff again next year. That's their current understanding as well, that I've been told by our Forest Service staff here locally. So looking at next year, no seasonal crews from the Forest Service on the ground again. They have some options where they brought in some Rocky Mountain Youth Corps interns to kind of fill some of those gaps on an interim basis. But we are again looking at going from our crew this year from 6 full-time, 40 hours a week seasonally to potentially up to 12 to help fill those gaps, to manage and help address recreation, trail side, and that stewardship side. So we're seeing continued large gaps on the Forest Service side, and we want to help support that with this crew. And we want to make sure that we continue to maintain the experience that our community loves and values, especially the Minturn community here. And that's what this crew would be doing out there on the ground. We do plan on having a youth corps again next year, which would do some of the same work that you see in the bottom left there. And that will be at least 16 to 18-year-olds again, spending a month out there, learning this as a career path. Hopefully they're our future trail conservation crew, and also getting paid to do it. This year we had youth from every single high school in Eagle County except for one on our crew, which was really cool to see. And we've already had a couple of those youth reach out to want to be on our trail crew next year. So it's great to have that local community investment and buy-in and career path from youth to our crew. So that's what this group and our crew would be doing here. The last one quickly, and this was a project that had just recently come up, and with the government shutdown, everything was kind of slowed down and understanding what was going on. To kind of wrap this up, there's two projects. The Forest Service would like to expand the Cross Creek Trailhead and the Grouse Creek Trailhead. And anyone that has been to those trailheads knows that both are overflowing on a regular basis, almost 7 days a week. And the Forest Service has some funding, and they have $25,000, and they want to focus that on the Cross Creek Trailhead. That's coming by the way of a National Forest Foundation support and grant. They don't have $25,000 extra to do both of them. And so the idea that we came up with here is, would Minturn like to see this Grouse Trailhead expanded? And if so, could they help support it? And if it was just a cash support, say, that's $25,000 is the numbers that the Forest Service got from some contractors that would be going out, hiring a contractor, coming in, doing it A to Z. The idea that I presented or emailed Rob and Cindy about was to see if Minturn Public Works might be able to help out with the grading, because one thing that we can't do, our crew can't do, we don't have, graders and all of that type of excavating equipment or experience. But what we do have is our crew as labor, where we could help offset some of those costs by having our crew out there to move boulders, take down fence, move the signage, kind of do that type of work at the trailhead. And Minturn Public Works could come in and help do the grading and, put it in the program of work, or if you will, from a public works side. And that would definitely save. It wouldn't be that $25,000 price tag. There still would be cost to it. We're thinking would be in the $10,000 to $15,000 range just for removing dirt, for time and crew, for labor, for materials, for that type of cost for the project. So again, I know it's a late ask, but I wanted to bring the opportunity forward to you all to at least present it and make sure that you're aware of it for next year.
I feel this one's real important just because the cars parked alongside the road. One of these days, somebody's going to be too far into the road and open the door and get hit, and having more parking on site off the road is definitely the way to go.
Yeah, I agree.
The other piece of this is for funding. wildfire mitigation work as well, especially if Forest Service is not gonna have any seasonals. So our expanded conversation with the regional director on that, how they fit in, or at least some of that work is tied to that, but also some labor effort from our end, since previously they said that wasn't feasible since it was federal land. But if they're not gonna do seasonal work,
Labor for wildfire mitigation.
daily deadfall, that's not acceptable. So we can tie that somehow, the funding can be allocated accordingly.
If I'm not mistaken, the crews do some camp cleanups and, that's a, some of those things that keeps me up at night too.
Yeah.
The grouse trailhead, I think, do you have any numbers off the top of your head about how many people are using that? It's like one of the
Yeah,
popular things.
thanks for asking that. We do have trail counters in the grouse area to understand use there. And it's around, those counters around 45,000 counts per season. That doesn't capture everyone. So it's probably higher than that. Additionally, in the grouse trail system this coming year, it sounds like another project that will happen is installing at least 2, if not 3 bridges over the creek crossing on Grouse Lake Trail and West Grouse Creek Trail. So it'd be another great improvement to that area as well. I think that's not part of this ask. That's a separate project that we're partnering with the Forest Service and actually Eagle Summit Wilderness Alliance on, that our crew would help support build.
Just seems to me, I don't like talking to CDOT too about that area. Like I've said this a few times, like I don't think we want to like do any efforts to like increase use over there, but we got a ton of people coming to Meadow and Grouse, and we got a lot of local businesses that would love us to capture more of those people coming in. So I think if like making the experience better and then looking at signage opportunities along there and crosswalks or whatever we can do to make that to kind of capture those people and encourage them to keep going for a few more feet, whether it's a better walking or biking experience into town or whatever. Like this is part of what we could be doing to support our local businesses too. So.
Maybe even add a bike parking spot there too. Because since we've got the Eco Trail coming in.
Bus stop there. Oh.
There's a bus stop there?
It's an on-call bus stop. Right?
Oh, okay.
I think it's a.
Thanks.
Well,
Thanks for all your work you guys do.
yeah, thank you for everything you all do, and please reach out to us with any questions you have on any of this.
Excuse me, we want to do those, right?
What's that?
Or you wanted to see if we could put those in the budget? Okay.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the piece in regards to the fire prevention when we're looking at the total ask here. What's the realm of the budget?
Okay.
What is the
15.
what is the like the ask or the question on that one from you? Of like what do you want to see?
So previously when we brought up, obviously going way back in time when we had a volunteer fire department, but that aside, our ability to augment Forest Service to take care of mitigation work
On federal land.
on federal land,
Gotcha.
which is already occurring through them. So whether it's through their charter agreement with Forest Service to be able to do some of that, which will also allow us to validate some of the funding that we could look at pushing towards them for the work we're talking about. Under the premise that obviously federal government's not pulling their weight seasonally speaking. So yes, from my end, please do look at the amounts that are feasible based on the numbers here.
We do the front range, that front range forestry guy or front.
Country Ranger.
Yeah, that one. And then we have a fire fee also that we pay. Wildland fire fee that we pay. Those are 2 different things. We haven't been asked to do anything else, so I don't know if I can put some money in, but I don't know who give it to.
I mean, we could also look at our ability to do things.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we'll be entering the summer with a much different public works than we've had in a while.
So I mean, I believe we're all in agreement. I'm just saying, looking at a larger effort. That includes what VVMTA is asking.
Okay.
So
I'd be in favor of contributing at least something to the. The, I wanna call it about the trail. The trail conservation crew. It's been a few things over the last 10 years, because. I mean, like, even you didn't even bring this up, but like, you ran the OHV crew this year.
We did.
Like, that's kind of out of our wheelhouse, but like the Forest Service is asking a trusted organization to keep stepping up and. Keep doing it, so.
We've hired for 2 years, 3 years straight, we hired a wilderness ranger that we hired and turned over to the Forest Service to have as Forest Service crew. This last year, we hired 3 OHV, which is off-highway vehicle, seasonal staff to turn over to the Forest Service to have them to use out on 4x4 roads, all of the Forest Service dirt roads, doing maintenance and mitigation and stewardship on all of the roads. So we've continued to try to fill the gaps as best we can.
well, in this area I'm talking about specifically anyways.
Yeah. Wildfire mitigation in regards to if you're thinking like thinning or
Mostly deadfall.
It's a little bit of a tricky one that we've begun to explore a little bit to understand what opportunities and what collaboration exists within our work that we're doing in that. But it's a whole nother beast as well as what we're learning. And that's where if it's something that you're thinking of like large deadfall clearing and, putting piles together for burning or removal or chipping, it might be more of a Eagle Valley wildland and or like old growth or specialized land management has been doing a lot of that. If you see driving down I-70 and Arrowhead and Beaver Creek and all that.
Sure. I'm looking at it more from holistic, combining all of it. If we use Cougar Ridge Trail as a perfect example,
Totally.
based on Forest Service work, and then all the deadfall left behind.
Mm-hmm.
That's not good work.
Yeah.
So combining trail maintenance with multiple organizations and the funding. Bottom line is trying to be creative, get your folks taken care of for the work they do, plus the key items we need to get done for obvious reasons.
We love that. I actually had a conversation exactly around that concept of the Eagle Valley Wildland about 2 weeks ago. See what opportunities there are for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Board.
Got our support.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, and we are on business items. First up, resolution number 48, series 2025, resolution to approve a listing contract for the Highlands parcels.
Okay, and we have Mike Sawyer here to kind of help us with that, and then we have Pete and Brent, I assume.
You did.
Thank you. So at the last meeting, council gave direction to staff to negotiate a listing agreement for the Highlands property to get it on the market and see if we can find the right buyer to purchase the property. There are a number of kind of standard provisions in a listing agreement. So in your packet, you received albeit only yesterday, but still got to you. A memorandum, a resolution, and then a draft of the listing agreement. My memorandum went through kind of some of the major points that can be subject to negotiation. I do want to highlight a few of those. Primarily, people in a contract are worried about what's going to cost. The proposed compensation in the listing agreement is 6% of the purchase price. I will tell you that is fairly standard. It is subject to negotiation, but I would tell you that with vacant property, it's one thing to have a condo in Vail on the market and say, well, I'm willing to go down a little bit because that thing's going to turn. To have a vacant property that is somewhat unique in both good and challenging ways, you need to provide for an adequate amount of compensation to make it worth the realtor's time to invest in the property, which they have committed to do, and to get it sold. So I did not have a problem with the 6% commission. We do have a carve out in there, that if the property is sold to one of the 3 entities that we have spoken to date, Department of Wildlife, the Eagle Valley Land Trust, and Eagle County, their commission would be 2%. They would earn that commission because they probably will do some assistance in shepherding that transaction forward, but also they will have invested in marketing and various things by that point. And so it's appropriate that they receive some payout, even if it's a lesser payout. The item that I think we need to talk about, and I know that the team wants to talk to you about, are a couple of proposed provisions that essentially we'd put them in the listing agreement, but they're things that would end up in the MLS, the multi-list service announcement that this property is on the market. And they would be conditions that the town would require at closing in order to protect a couple of interests that the town has. The first one is, we need, if someone comes in and says they want to purchase parcel 2 is the more southerly of the 2 parcels. We need to make sure there's access to parcel 1. And because of the weather and fall and kind of some of the, frankly, just challenges of charting exactly where a road would go up there, we don't know exactly how to get to parcel 1 without crossing parcel 2. And when you look at the topography and the maps, it seems to me that we're going to have some easement across parcel 2 to get to parcel 1. And if those parcels were to sell separately, which is a possibility under the listing arrangement that we're putting forward, we would have to do something of a blanket easement across parcel 2 that we would then define sometime next summer, when we can send our engineer and wetlands delineator and I mean, whatever it is we have to do to figure out where this road can go. We need to get them up there next summer when the conditions are right, but we're not going to know that location until next summer. So if someone came, made an offer on parcel 2 that was to the town's satisfaction, we could move to closing without having that defined, but there would have to be written into the closing documents that we have the right of an easement to get over parcel 2 to parcel 1, and that we would then commit to get that finalized within a certain period of time. So that's one condition. I know that our team has thoughts on that. The other item that I've written in, it would be a provision that would require at closing that there be a covenant recorded against parcels 1 and 2 for the protection of wildlife. And in the discussions we've had with Devin Duvall, the wildlife manager, as well as comments that I've received from members on council, I think there are 2 major concerns. One is that the property, to the degree that it's just completely fenced off, that area actually provides an important route for the elk herd to move east to west. And while some level of development and fencing around a kind of little compound where you'd have your house and your barn and your ADU and whatever else went up there, seems, at least to me, to be reasonable and something that would not preclude the wildlife moving through if you just say, hey, like anyone, you can go fence your boundaries, and then all of a sudden we've got essentially a fence wall that prevents the wildlife from moving in through. So I drafted the language that again would go in the MLS and that would be carried over into a contract. If someone were to purchase, that essentially says, you know, you can enclose a compound area of 2 acres on the property and fence that off, and, you know, have that secure. You can put a gate up wherever the road ends up being, and you can fence 75 feet on either side, because that, at least in my mind, leaves plenty of room for the animals then to go around the fence and still make their way east to west. The other provision in there that relates to comments we've heard from Devin quite a bit, that unleashed dogs is a big problem for wildlife, and so that outside that 2 acre area that we'd have a covenant that said that you had to have dogs on a leash outside that area. Covenant would be enforceable by the town to protect those interests in the future. Again, I know that our team has some thoughts on that, and they want to talk to you about trying to strike the right balance between protecting interests that the town has on these items versus the expectations that a buyer might have. So we're going to give them an opportunity to talk to us. But those were the items that I had down. Certainly, if anyone else on council has additional thoughts about things we need to be thinking proactively about, look forward to hearing those. Now is the time to kind of finalize this stuff. Once we receive an offer, unless we've identified conditions that will run with title that are going to be a requirement at closing, those need to be known up front. We can't, after we go under contract, just say, oh, and by the way, we're going to put this covenant on your property before we close. At that point, we're barred from doing that. So I'm happy to answer any questions. And again, we want to involve our Slifer Smith Frampton team to give us their thoughts as well.
Doing that easement between parcel A and B, does the Eagle River Water and Sanitation District easement affect that at all, crossing that, or would it have to be like a bridge over it? Or
there will have to be some kind of crossing structure. The way that it's not an easement, they actually own the land between those 2 parcels, and the way that there's a agreement in title that Battle Mountain negotiated. The way that reads is that there is the right to cross. You have to go get Eagle River's approval as to the location and the style of the crossing. But Eagle River ultimately has an obligation to approve one. You know, they can't just orphan that property out. So,
great, thanks.
They don't have really any more issues with this, but a question on the 4 tasks that we wanted to get moving on. Understanding the survey will come after the contract, I would assume, but the road, the gate, any further movement on assessment of that?
We'll let Rob give a little update. I do want to note that the town actually has gathered survey information for this property and prepared some very nice survey exhibits to give to the brokerage team as part of a packet of information we want to make available. So we have worked on some survey material, but it has not been actually going onto the site and saying, here's where you can put a road down through those. And then Rob, I believe, well, no, you had a conversation with the Forest Service. You can give an update about the gate and
So before we jump on, should we talk about like those provisions that you wanted to do first, or should we?
Well, why don't we hear from the brokers, because I think they have some thoughts and concerns about that, and then we can have a discussion with council about what direction we go.
Okay, yeah, before we go down the gate rabbit hole, I think that we should nail this out.
Well, I welcome you guys to state name and address.
Pete Seibert, I'm with Slifer Smith and Frampton, live up in Dale. I'll start out, and if I get off track, Brent will give me the hook here. But, the first point, the easement for access to the second parcel, that's an easy, that's easy to, once the more definition we can give that in terms of location, the better off we'll be. It may be good to have a little bit of flexibility with that. Here's what, in other words, you're the first buyer coming in. Here's what we're thinking. This is why we think this is what makes sense, but you are the first buyer. We're willing to listen to you a little bit. That sort of thing helps us. If that's not something that fits with what the town needs to do, then, the next best thing is some certainty there. So that's okay too. We'll work with it either way. And then the fencing, and this is where I'm probably going to call on Brent to respond to what he sees on other listings and other locations. But the first comment I have is just that anything, and I understand there need to be limitations because the town has concerns, and that makes sense. But anything that we do in the way of a limitation will affect marketability a little bit. So that's where talking about a balance that I heard Mike say is really important that way. I don't know that one thing that didn't come up, I haven't asked Brent about this either, but if somebody were to buy one of those parcels and want to keep horses up there, is a 2-acre area what you need to be talking about, or is it somewhat larger? Or that's just a question I have. So maybe Brent will speak to that too. I'm hitting with him.
Yeah.
So that's my take on those two items. Is there something else that I need to address up here right now?
I think just your team, we're looking to you for guidance.
Yes.
That you may not get exactly what you want, but we're looking for your unvarnished thoughts on this.
Yeah. And I there's the other, and I think Brent will speak to this, but I understand not putting a fence around the entirety of this land on one hand, but on the other hand, it's a wildlife concern. On the other hand, when it gets to hunting season, how do the hunters know where the private land, the public land stops and the private land starts? So that's something you gotta try to sort out. It would be from a sales standpoint, it would be easier to be able to say each of those owners could fence their property. And then maybe try to figure out a way that if it's the fences come down in the winter, something of that nature, or pieces of it to allow that migration. I don't know what the timeframes are for it, but that would be, if there's a way to do that. So that would be the absolute druthers, but I didn't even bring it up at first because I don't think that's really what anybody wants to see. So I think that's just something that we have to understand when it comes time to get the buyer serious about it. The idea of the gate and the fencing at the beginning, I think that's plenty. That should keep everybody else out, and that should work great. So those are my only comments at this stage.
I think it's important that we have really close communication with Pete and his clients that are going up there. If he thinks he's got a serious buyer, then perhaps we just need to meet with them and see what kind of compromise. If it's a deal killer, let's find out if we can get some compromising going on and try to negotiate that out. And if it's just like no go, then it's up to council to decide what we want to do.
And Mr. Mayor, that is a good point, because a contract will be brought. We can't sell the land at the staff level. You have to approve the contract. In fact, unfortunately, you have to do it by ordinance, which is a little cumbersome, but that's your charter. So you will see a a contract, and they can present alternative terms from the buyer. Just because we have it written this way in the listing agreement and it goes on the MLS, if a buyer says, well, I have some different thoughts about how we can balance these interests, and here's what I'd like to present, get in the contract, that is always able for negotiation and discussion.
So realistically, at this point, that's where we should probably leave it. These are just ideas. That's it. Up for negotiation. Because personally, I think the dogs piece is a bit in the weeds, but
Yeah.
that's.
I think
that's just a flat no. That's a nice thought, but you're gonna tell somebody that lives up in the mountains a dog can't run outside the fence. Got it. So back to the point is we just accrue concerns and issues that are just up for negotiation at the appropriate time, assuming we have a viable individual that wants to purchase the lot or lots.
like I would just pare it all down to like any fencing should be wildlife friendly and leave it like very simple. I agree. I think like if there are people who feel really strongly that there should be no people, no animals, no fencing, no nothing up there, then like I think those people should be fighting really hard to fund a conservation purchase. I think our duty is to find out what we can make and what we can offset from a water treatment plant. So I think adding a bunch of limitations right now seems kind of crazy. I think we already have an ordinance around wildlife friendly fencing, so leave it at that. And
I agree with that. I don't want to scare the buyers off, don't even get anybody to look at it.
If you allow dogs through the whole property, then that's done. No elk is going to go there. So, I'd rather see a compromise in other areas. A 2-acre footprint of their residential complex is a lot of room for the dogs, and if they're out there walking the property and they have control of the dog, great. But if there's dogs running loose, then that's all there is. The elk won't be there.
Either way, at this point,
Again, I tried to articulate concerns that I had heard from the council.
and you did a fine job.
Thank you. And we definitely wanted you to hear, from the experts about how that interplays with marketing and selling the property. You're the decision maker. We can leave some language in, we can take it all out. It is up to you.
so I'm just thinking down the road, theoretically, we put some dog zoning thing in there. Like, are we sending Kevin up there to like look for dogs running around on a weekly basis? Like, the Forest Service doesn't even really patrol the wilderness dog leash rule. And we just heard that Cross Creek was one of the busiest trails, and people have dogs off leashes up there. People are up there with dogs all over the place. I trail run all the time up there. I see dogs all the time. I still feel strongly that we should find out with little limitations what kind of offers we're going to get, and then if 150 people that live in the town of Minturn and our water rate payers show up next meeting and tell me I'm wrong and we need to have no dogs, and then we need to limit what we can sell that property for, and maybe that'll be different. But I think for now we kind of owe the people of this town the opportunity to see what this parcel's worth and what we can do to offset our water rates.
I just think if somebody's building a trophy home up there, they're not gonna just have a bunch of dogs on the wild anyway, so, I mean, they might have a dog or two that they bring with them, but they're gonna take care of them, so.
I just couldn't picture buying property for that much money and then being told I wasn't allowed to have like animals on it.
Might scare a potential buyer away.
So at this point, we just need to approve the resolution for the listing agreement, correct?
It would be approved. The motion would be to approve resolution 48 that approves the listing agreement, and then to direct me to it, because currently that doesn't contain these two provisions. So you could choose one or both of them or none of them to go in. Well, I think you need to think real hard about access, because parcel one without accessing.
Access, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about fencing.
Necessity.
Right. Got
We
it.
have to even say fence, like wildlife friendly fencing is in our code.
And what happens on these parcels will go through your site plan review process. But I will tell you, we have nothing in our site plan process that would say you've got to not leave a portion of your property unfenced so the elk can get through. If that is a priority, that is something we need to be building in at the current time. We can't do that regulatorily after the fact.
I think elk can.
Can I add something?
Yes.
Yeah.
To that, do I need to state my name and?
You always.
Yeah.
I'm Brent Rimola Slifer. So there's a lot of studies out there, and I would recommend like reaching out to the Forest Service, state of Colorado, to understand how private ranches, these ranchettes, actually protect wildlife. Like elk and deer, they're more populous and I think more protected on private land than they are in the Forest Service. On some other listings we have, like down in Gypsum Creek, there's deer and elk all over the place, and it's private land and it's fenced. Not a huge like I-70 fence, but a simple barbed wire fence that deer and elk can jump over. Another ranch listing we have, the Nottingham Ranch, so up on Castle Peak, they do knockdown fences. So in the wintertime, you can literally knock the fence down so it creates paths for migration, keeps the cows in the cow season. And when you don't have your cows on the property, you knock it down and then you put it back up in the spring. So there's lots of different options, but I would recommend that whoever is the most concerned about it, like bringing in a third party to speak to the issue. I really don't think a fence is a bad thing, and it's going to prevent the migration of deer and elk. And if anything, it's going to
Keeps hunters out.
and you're not going to get what Pete said. It's going to keep hunters out. Otherwise, they're not going to know where they're walking or hunting. And then, Tom, to one of your points, as far as the more information we have early on, whether it's a survey, understanding easements, understanding dogs, elk, fences, all that type of stuff, the more information we have to go promote their property, the better. Yeah, it's just a tool in the tool belt. Sure. That is worthwhile having. And yeah, we could talk a long time about dogs, but different conversation.
I will
So the easement language, you just need paragraph B, or we gotta read this whole?
You just say with to include paragraph B in the staff memo.
All right, make a motion to approve resolution number 48 series 2025, resolution approving a listing agreement with Slifer Smith and Frampton Real Estate to list for sale and market their Highlands parcels, with the addition of the inclusion of paragraph B for easement in accordance with the staff memorandum.
I'll second that.
got a motion by Tom, second by Gusty, all in favor.
Aye.
Aye.
Passes. Thank you all.
Thank you. We'll get that finished up tomorrow.
Great.
The J hour.
Yeah. The fun stuff for Jay. Ordinance number 11, series 2025, first read. An ordinance.
One thing sorry.
Yeah.
What did I did notice that we skipped over any updates you might have had on that road, and I had a comment too that I had like kind of looked the access with the gate and the Forest Service. We went right into wildlife and then forgot to go back. It's not really relevant to the resolution, I guess. So should we save it, or did you have an update on that?
I mean, I don't really have an update per se, because I think I was kind of waiting for where we were going to go with this.
Okay.
And then I was going to try to schedule a meeting with them next week. And then, because I've had town engineer Jeff Spinell look into this. So I think it's a matter of what do we want to do? When do we want to do it? And kind of getting like a perspective from them. But we could come back to the next meeting and say, these are some of the options now that they will be under contract and.
I think Brent talked to the Forest Service, didn't you?
Yes.
You wanna-
So what I learned from the Forest Service is where the gate is now, that's blocking the county road. And the reason why the Forest Service put it there is just to keep people from camping and parking along the road. So their property, I think, as you guys all know, starts further down the road when it starts going up to Diggawan. So theoretically, the fence or the gate could be moved back that far. Just the town of Minturn and Eagle County's got to tell the Forest Service to do it. And then somebody's, I presume, has to write a check to do it. But for
So
now,
it could be like paved and plowed to there tomorrow if somebody wanted to pay for it.
correct. And I'm not sure how Eagle, and I did, so I spoke with Mike Beach, and Mike Beach didn't know how that worked with Eagle County. He just said the gate's where it is, so people don't park their campers and camp there during the winter time. They do in the summer, obviously, but in the winter time, they're trying to prevent that.
Well, BMTA full-time coastal.
Yeah, but I don't know how that would work with Eagle County for, like, if you do move the gate for plowing it, or if the property's listed. I'm confident we can get the keys to the gate and get it open, but getting from, I guess we just got to think logistically, snow wise, if that's where we park and go in from there, or if it's worthwhile having somebody plow the road. I don't know. Thanks. Yeah.
It's all better. Most no snow.
Takes out a potential hurdle though to access.
All right, now we'll move on to J, ordinance 11 series 2025.
No.
Ordinance 11 is the bill ordinance. They all are. This one actually pulls forward and funds the budget that we've discussed all year. This is 2025 supplemental appropriation. And basically what that is you guys have heard of most of these before that, we've talked about over the course of the year. So they're not new. It's just now we're incorporated into the budget so that we can, per our audit, receive that kind of thing. I do want to point out specifically that this is not we still have certain accounts that are going to be over because they didn't spend all the money in that line item. I'm not unfunding line items. I'm only funding the ones that are falling short. And it's called a variance. A positive variance would be a revenue is up. One of those will be sales tax. I'm actually thinking that's looking 8 to 10% up. I haven't wanted to say anything because everybody in the valley seems to not be up. And so I keep thinking I don't want to jinx us. But this one will change from to the second reading because I'll incorporate November and what I have of December, and what I think we'll have in December. So that'll change a little bit for those, but other than that, we're ready to go with it. If anybody has any questions on what we're funding and why, I can probably answer those.
It's in the ordinance. I have nothing.
No questions. Peter or Earl, any questions?
Doesn't look like it. It does take a public hearing.
Yeah. Possible if there's no question. Oh,
Sorry, I may be belated on this. I have someone on Zoom with their hand up, and I hope I didn't miss it earlier.
no, you're good. I'm opening public comment now for this or ordinance.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you can.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, please state name and address for the record.
Yeah, this is Bill Hoplitzel, 262 Taylor Street. I just wanted to comment on the last issue on fences. I want to point out for comparison that there are no fences on large acreage estate lots throughout the valley, including Mountain Star, all throughout Cordillera and Upper Bellyache. And that's part of the covenants in these communities to be wildlife friendly. You know, there's really absolutely no need out there in the Highlands parcel for this kind of thing. You know, someone who wants to build a fence, that's more like that's like a Texas mentality of like, I want to piss on my turf and show everybody where it is. And I think it's up to the town and easily within the town's rights to say that's not what's going on around here. It's up to us to tell residents coming here how we, you know, apply our values on the landscape, not up to us to take it from whoever comes in here with whatever they want to do. And I think if you look around the valley, there's plenty of examples where it is not necessary. I think it's a bit of a red herring from, and you know, Pete and Brent, I appreciate you being out there. And I know you guys, well, I know you, Pete, I don't know you, Brent, very well, but I think it's another kind of red herring and misdirection that affects property values. I think empirical evidence for many of those developments I just named will show you that it does not decrease your property value and that there's absolutely no problem with prohibiting that. So I think that's one thing for Highlands parcel to think about. And then I do have a question. Have those parcels been platted already? Or are they just in the midst of that?
Those two are platted.
Yeah, they are platted.
Meets and bounds.
Okay.
They're on a plat.
Oh, okay, they're platted.
So, you know, there's a non-system trail back there that goes from the back corner of the ball fields in Malloy and connects up to Cross Creek Trailhead. It's been there for decades, receives heavy use. The school uses it to run on with their cross-country athletes. Many Minturn residents use it to travel back and forth. It decreases traffic on Tigawan Road. It decreases traffic up to the trailhead at Cross Creek to have it in existence. It's kind of a longstanding feature. And that trail crosses the point of these parcels in the back corner, right where they meet up against the wilderness boundary. And, you know, if these parcels are platted out and sold before that's really thought about or really taken into consideration by the town, that's a really important longstanding public access point, public use area in the back end of Cross Creek that I think has high potential to be lost and forced out by a landowner trying to enforce trespass actions back there. So I think the town really needs to slow down before they, you know, settle on the final plat back there if it hasn't been carved out, and consider carving out, you know, a 20, 50 foot, whatever right of way along that back property line along the wilderness area to hold that longstanding public use legally back through that area and you know, support those values that have always been in existence now for decades back there. And not allow them to be lost, you know, to a high-end homeowner and compound through that back area and potentially enforcing trespass action. And I can come in and meet with town staff and show you where I'm talking about on the parcel map, on GIS layers, whatever. We can go back and walk back there one day and look at the triple point I'm talking about where all these parcels meet and the trespass would occur. But I think it's really important to note that, and I think it's really important that whatever happens when those two parcels are sold up there, that we ensure, you know, our community access is not lost to the advantage of a part-time homeowner or a large estate lot owner. So those are my 2 cents. I think the fence is a misdirection area. I think there's zero problem prohibiting fences back in that area other than maybe what you might have right around your house for pet containment, that sort of thing. And if you look all around the valley, that's exactly how CPW has negotiated wildlife friendly development in Cordillera and Mountain Star and other places. If you drive up there, there are no lot line parcel wide fences going around those large estate lots up there that are of this, you know, multiple acre size. So that's point one. And then point two is I think before the final plat is carved out and before anything is sold, and even if we need to reopen the plat and reestablish this right away I'm talking about, I think the town needs to slow down and make sure that happens before it sells land to anybody that might then shut out these longstanding community user values in that area. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
So I will just say that, you know, if we just approve this agreement, we're not going to get an offer in the next 14 days. If you want to reconsider conditions of what would be required at closing, we can always bring this up at the next meeting. So
sounds good. Anyone else online?
No one else with their hand raised.
last minute thoughts from council, or as we will take a motion? I'm closing public comment.
Everything that's in bold, really. Make a motion to approve town of Minturn, Colorado ordinance number 11, series 2025, ordinance amending the 25 budget as set forth in the following exhibit A to appropriate additional general fund revenues in the amount of $174,047 and appropriating additional general fund expenditures in the amount of $217,351 and appropriating additional enterprise fund revenues in the amount of $1,960,238 and appropriating additional enterprise fund expenditures in the amount of $1,270,050 and appropriating additional capital fund revenues in the amount of $2,500 and appropriating additional general improvement fund revenue in the amount of $15,000, expenses in the amount of $15,000.
I'll second that.
Excellent. Motion by Tom, second by Gusty, roll call.
Right.
Gusty,
Eric, and we'll go online.
Earl, I.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you. The second one is ordinance number 12. This is appropriating fees. Little sidebar, there is a process to doing this. We approve what we're changing in 2005 or 25, and then we add the fees in, then we'll do the mill levy, and then we'll do the budget itself. This one could change from things that are discussed later tonight when Rob and Troy get on. But there are not a lot of changes. The only one that I'm really looking at right now is the trash fees. I'm looking at about a 7.5% increase. We're looking at extending, redoing, whatever you want to call the contract with Vail Honeywagon. We've seen the trash cans that we're going to be looking at. They're going to do a single stream recycle, that kind of stuff. So we're looking at a little bit of extra cost just because they haven't gone up very much from their contract. And that's the only thing, if anybody's got any questions. Public hearing.
I will open up to public comment or public hearing. Audience or online?
No one online with their hand raised.
Alrighty, I will close public hearing. And are there any other thoughts? Otherwise, make a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 12, series 2025, an ordinance annually setting, amending, and approving town fees as set forth in following attachment to be included in Appendix A of the Minturn Municipal Code for the town of Minturn fees commencing January 1st, 2026.
We got a motion by Gussie and a second by Tom, and roll call, please.
Brian, I.
Gussie, aye.
Eric, I. I'm going online.
Earl, I.
Okay.
Thank you all. Ordinance number 13.
Ordinance 13 is setting the mill levy for 2026. This was a reassessment year. It did go up what I would consider substantially. We did not change our mill levy, but the values, because of added homes and properties and completed properties, that kind of thing, changed. Murphy's Law, the instant I got this done and into the packet and the packet went out, I literally got the final assessed valuation. So I can tell you it's going to go down about $10,000, which is less than 1% of what I was expecting we'd bring in. So it's a bigger swing than I thought it would be because it's a reassessment year. Next year we'll probably $400, $500, $600. Anybody's got any questions on this? I would like to point out, in my tenure, we have not ever changed the mill levy. It's always been 17.934. And as I've said before, as the economy goes up, we go up. As the economy goes down, we tighten our belts too, just like the citizens.
That's good. Any questions?
No. Your turn.
All right.
Read this one.
We're only open for public comment real quick. Anybody in the audience or online with hand raised?
No one online with their hand raised.
Seeing none, closing public comment, and I'll take a motion.
You do this one. Motion, town intern ordinance number 13, series 2025. Ordinance levying general property taxes for the year 2026 to meet general operating costs of government for the town of Intern, Colorado for the 2025 budget year. Is it the right one? Yeah. Okay.
Second that.
Yeah, a motion by Brian, a second by Gusty, and roll call.
Ryan, I.
Oh,
Dusty, aye.
Eric, I, and then online.
Earl, I.
Kate,
Motion passes. Thank you, Jake. And I believe last but not least, ordinance number 14.
Ordinance number 14 actually approves the budget itself on first reading. This will change a little bit as it gets tweaked a little tighter. Possibly the 15 grand for the parking lot that they talked about earlier, that'll change it a little bit. But other than that, it's pretty much set. This appropriates carry forward funds and revenue and expenses for 26.
Any questions?
public comment, since it's final. Right?
Yeah.
I have nothing.
All right, I will open it up to public comment. Anybody online or in the audience want to speak to ordinance number 14?
No one online with their hand raised here.
All right, in that case, closing public comment, and I will take a motion.
Make a motion to approve Town of Intern, Colorado ordinance number 14, series 2025, ordinance appropriating revenues, appropriating expenditures, approving transfers, and adopting the Town of Intern budget for the period beginning on the first day of January 2026 and ending on the last day of December 2026.
I second that.
Got a motion by Tom, second by Gusty, and roll call one more time.
Brian, I.
Tom, aye.
Dusty, aye.
Eric, I.
Earl, I.
Kate,
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jake.
See you in 2 weeks.
Good job, Jay.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. On to some discussion direction items. First up, we have water treatment plant bond financing options discussion.
Yeah, and then we should have Troy coming online. Just make sure that he's knows. And this is kind of a preliminary discussion. We were planning on coming back at the next meeting, but I wanted to get the numbers that we're kind of looking at in front of you. They definitely can be subject to change. I've tried to talk with a few of you individually and just kind of go over what your different perspectives are and the direction that you'd want to go. Obviously, our municipal advisor, Troy, is here to provide you sound financial advice. And me as your manager is just kind of looking for where you decide to go, regardless of the advice that you may get. So that's kind of what this first discussion is about. Hey, Troy. And you're good to go and start, Troy, whenever you're ready.
Oh, okay, great. It's great to be with everyone tonight. Nice to be with you. I'm going to talk through the slides that I provided to you in advance, or that were provided to you in advance. And then I'll jump into a little Excel worksheets, and happy to address any questions along the way, of course. And I think what's important for tonight is that this is kind of a priority discovery exercise where I've made some very initial and conservative assumptions about what we're going to discuss tonight, and I think it's important for me to hear where your priority points are. Okay, and we'll talk about those as we move along. I think the second slide just gives you some background and context about where we've been and where we are right now. I think it's important to start with explaining why, we're here tonight, right? As your municipal advisor, it's my job to understand what the options are for you to borrow and to explain the costs and benefits of those options. And so I understand that, we're now at 90% design. It's been submitted to CDPHE for approval. We know that's about a 3 to 6 month process. It could be a little longer. Understanding that we have a shortened construction season up at your altitude in your community, it was really important for me. One of the reasons why I did want to explore an alternative to the Power Development Authority, which I'll talk about here in a second, was because of the timing. Okay. The Colorado Water Resources and Power Development Authority is a state revolving fund. And through the program that I understand is currently under consideration, that has a January 5th application deadline. And they go through a process administratively at the staff level to consider that application, and board approval, and then bond issuance by the authority, and then loaning you the funds. That can take anywhere from 2 to 5 months. And for me, I think it's important for this project to be constructed as quickly as possible. That way things work most efficiently. And so that's a primary reason for me looking at an alternative is when do you get those funds? And so looking at the assumptions for the analysis, again, I mentioned off the top of my comments that, we're very conservative, right? And in these initial projections, we had about an 11.3, 11.9 construction cost as of the most recent numbers. And I've inflated those to 12 million. Again, a very conservative 9% increase from 60% design figures, not 90%. Interest rates are estimates based on my working experience in the market with SRF options as well as direct lending options. Of course, these are only estimates at this point, and there's plenty of time for us to kind of finalize what those figures look like. Repayment term is an important consideration here. Certainly with the authority, you can get 30 years, up to 30 years. The bank options, you might be able to get a little under that. There is this concept of a rainy day fund called a debt service reserve. And this is a little pile of money that's calculated with a very specific mathematical calculation. And that rainy day fund can be funded by bond proceeds, or it can be funded by cash on hand. And what that rainy day fund or debt service reserve fund does is it sits there for the life of the obligation in case revenues are disrupted and there's not enough to, pay interest and or principal. These debt service reserves are set up as additional security for the authority or a lender. And, there's an important concept there, because that can come out of bond proceeds or it can come out of cash. And I think for me, what I've been doing recently is recommending, to the extent it's available, using cash instead of bond proceeds, because you get a little more efficient financing that way. When the financing just goes to the actual project it's constructing without other things like a DSR, just makes the financing a little more efficient, and that's something that I'm looking out for you on. The security. Okay, so I've talked about a debt service reserve or rainy day fund. That's a form of additional security. The primary security that will be provided to the PDA, to the Power Development Authority or a bank, is a pledge of net revenues of that enterprise fund. So you've got gross water revenues minus operational expenditures. That amount is called net revenues, and that's what you're pledging, and that's what you've pledged in previous obligations. Okay, and the debt service coverage, this is another acronym. I apologize for those, but I do explain them. The coverage concept is something that is commonplace with all enterprise, particularly utility enterprise funds. And it's this concept that revenues have to cover your debt obligations by a certain amount. Okay. And here, based on existing obligations of the town, that debt service coverage covenant is 1.1 times or 110%. That means that you have to show in the water fund that your total revenues, net revenues, cover your debt service obligations by 110%. Okay. And I will note it's very important context that this is the lowest number you can basically use as a debt service coverage covenant. Typically, what I see with these obligations is somewhere from 125 or 125% to 150%. So I do think this is a very flexible debt service coverage covenant for context. As I understand, the construction period is 2 years. I'd like to keep it that way. And so that's part of the reason why we're talking tonight is, for me, it's really important to get this project going online as soon as the ground thaws in the spring.
Let me pause for
Okay.
1 second. Everybody with
Yes.
Troy on the debt service coverage, and that's that
Yes,
110%.
please.
I know there were some questions. We're good? Awesome.
But I would like to make a comment on that though.
The debt service coverage?
When we did the state revolving fund on the water tank, the state revolving fund group looked at what we actually had for a rate, and they were even a little hesitant then. And we only borrowed 2 million on that,
Okay.
On what point?
on giving us the money on what our rate was. The rate that we have now for water rate was so high, they were a little hesitant on 2 million. If they were hesitant on 2 million, they're gonna really be hesitant on 12 million.
Were they hesitant? And that's where we got the 110? Because I think Troy's pulling the 110 from that loan. Is
Yes.
that they asked us to at least meet
That's
110?
probably why we went down to 110.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
I have a little fear here with 12 million. What's that gonna do?
Sure. We'll talk about that borrowing amount. Listen, while I've only had the privilege of working with you all for a couple, maybe 3 months, I know your community very well. I know the West Slope very well, and I understand that 12 million is a lot. But I will say that's just a starting place. I've got more to share on that topic. But the covenant, based on what was just said, it probably makes sense that the covenant was negotiated down for more flexibility with you all. Because for me, that's what I want for you all. So I'm okay with the 110 as far as financing is concerned. And so now I am discussing slide 3, the initial comparison analysis. Okay.
So does that debt service requirement go into like escrow and sit somewhere?
No, it's that's a great question, and thank you for it. So this is something that the threshold or the requirement on the town's behalf would be writing an annual certification letter, basically saying, hey, these were our revenues. Here are debt service obligations. It could be 110, it could be 115, 150. As long as you're above that 110, that's all you need to do. It's a reporting requirement. With that said,
and back into the enterprise.
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, it's not something you have to escrow or set aside. It's just something you have to document. Okay. So on this particular slide, this is a summary of what I think are the key factors to consider. Okay. And so you'll notice that the project amount is different between the two options. Why? Okay. Well, with the PDA option, I'm making some initial conservative assumptions that there are some increased costs to the Power Development Authority based on federal requirements, such as Buy America, Build America, Davis-Bacon, and domestic sourcing requirements. Okay. And I researched a pretty wide range, actually, as low as 6%, as high as 12%. And I picked right in the middle or a little lower than the middle at 8%. So what you're seeing there is a 8% increase from the bank loan or direct lending option, okay? That is yet to be finalized. And it's important to understand that a lot of these factors still require more information, okay? So the anticipated closing or delivery of funds is what I've been talking about today, right? 5/1/2026 for the PDA, that is an optimistic outlook for when you could close. That's as soon as you could possibly close with the PDA. And I would say that if we have guarantees from the PDA that we could fund by May 1st, then I think that would give me a lot more comfort about when you would be able to get your proceeds. But doing a stress analysis, it could be July before you get your money. And now you've got just about half a construction season lost. And to me, that's important because my familiarity, now I'm not a rock guy. My son's the rock guy, but I do know a little bit about the soil and ground in your area of the state. It's very rocky. And so what this earlier start does is it allows us to get into the ground as soon as it thaws. And if there's any unforeseen complications, starting earlier gives us more time within the construction cycle to address that unforeseen circumstance. Okay. Interest rates. The interest rate for the PDA was based on initial discussion with HDR and Paul Young. I think that's an appropriate assumption for today's markets, right? The 4.3% was collected from an anonymous indication of interest that I requested from 3 banks. I did not mention the town's name. I mentioned no specifics to you because nothing's approved yet. But I wanted to get a good idea of what these bank options would offer. And so 4.3 is kind of the middle of the rates that I got from those 3 banks, okay? As I said earlier, the repayment terms. So the longer you go out, yes, you pay more interest, but the lower your annual payment is. So that's an important pin to put into that particular item. Final maturity is the same for the PDA. For the bank option, 30-year money isn't typically available. It is in some circumstances, but it's not typically. Okay. So what the bank loan option requires is that if we have a 20-year term, we have to refinance that debt at least once for the remaining 10 years so that we're stretching out those payments over 25 or 30 years. First year of principal. So on the bank option, we have a lot of flexibility as to when the town can start amortizing principal, paying principal. Right now, for comparison purposes, I've kept this assumption the same for both. I do have to double check with the PDA if they allow delayed principal payment. And I would say that I would only delay that a year just to make that first year payment a little more easier to digest. And I'll talk about that in a second. DSR, just think rainy day fund, that debt service reserve fund. I still need more information from the authority on how they treat that. Because on the cost of issuance, you do get a subsidy. And it's a pretty substantial subsidy that I also need to confirm. But you basically pay 15% of the total cost of issuance rather than paying the whole cost of issuance. Okay. Now, it's important to note that while the cost of issuance is about roughly double for the bank loan,
right now it's not that.
The public, so the authority actually sells bonds out in the market. They take those bond proceeds and that's what they loan to you. That's why it's called a leveraged loan program, because the authority is going out to borrow and then they're taking those proceeds and lending them to you. And so typically with a public offering, the costs of issuance are much higher than a bank loan financing. So that's why the difference is pretty small in this example. Okay. Par amount. What is par amount? It's the face amount of the loan. Okay. And that includes the project amount, the debt service reserve, and the cost of issuance. Okay. And then prepayment flexibility is the last matter, but one that I think is incredibly important. I've done 3 direct lending arrangements in the last 4 months, and consistently I was able to receive a 3-year option to either refinance, pay down, or pay off the obligation. Whereas I told you a moment ago, the Power Development Authority, they issued those bonds in the bond market. Those come with 10-year prepayment lockouts. So we can't do anything. We can't pay it down. We can't pay it off. We can't refinance it for 10 years. Okay. And for me, I've told staff, the mayor, Gusty, cost of borrowing is really important. The second most 1B is flexibility. So that's why, now I think to your town attorney's comment on a call we had internally, he raised the question, well, what's the value of, being able to call those bonds in 3 years? And I think what the value is that you have the option to pay down the debt at that point, should you get an influx of revenues from an anticipated asset sale. Okay. And you'll see what I'm talking about on that topic in a moment. But for me, having that option is really valuable in case you need it. Right. And so for me, if 3 years comes along for the bank option and rates aren't where we need them to be, then we continue to wait. The term on the bank loan can be up to 20 years. So you're going to have 20-year fixed rate money, but you'll have to, so that means you have 7 years to say, all right, what if we get more money in it from the asset sale than we expected? Well, why wouldn't we want to have the option to pay down the debt? And I think that option is valuable, even if you don't use it in year 3. If you use it in year 5, 6, 7, or 8, it's still more valuable and more flexible than the PDA. Now, on the last slide, and thank you for whoever's navigating this. I appreciate that. So I go through the big parameters here, right? And so I think that starts with the construction cost. As I told you, I still need to kind of sharpen the pencil on my assumption for those BABA, Davis-Bacon, and domestic sourcing requirements. But, I think 8% is a nice middle of the road number. If it's 6%, then I'll change it to 6. That's balanced by, if we go the direct lending route, we do have flexibility to source materials from wherever we want. But there is some uncertainty there with regards to how tariffs might impact the cost of those materials. I've talked about timing now quite a bit, so I won't cover that anymore. And from a borrowing cost perspective, actually what I'll show you is these two options, at least at this time, are relatively close to each other in a number of metrics, which I'll show. But the PDA clearly offers the longest fixed rate term of debt. They provide some uncertainty about when you can get the funds. Hopefully I can get a more sharper answer on that. And then I think it's important for us to all understand the impact to ratepayers. I would say that the numbers that are noted here aren't applicable to the printouts of the cash flows, which I'm about to go over, and I'll explain why. All right. So you have those documents in front of you. I believe they were printed out for your reference. And so if everyone could just draw their attention to the CWR PDA leveraged loan cash flows. I think what's important here is that those numbers 90 to 124, I was using a lower single family equivalent figure than what was actually supposed to be the number. So the numbers that are in the printouts for you reflect the accurate single family equivalent, which is basically a user. Okay. And so in the initial analysis, when I was doing the PowerPoint, I was using a much lower SFE number than was applicable. So this particular worksheet is more accurate. Okay. It still assumes all those numbers that I shared with you a few moments ago. And you would be setting rates to the annual debt service. The reason why I show you net revenues at 110 debt service coverage is I think it's really important to be transparent about, hey, what's the reporting requirement you're going to have? Now, I have confidence that there's enough revenues in the water fund for you guys to present that certification annually. I just want you all to understand what does that 10% look like, right? And so that also goes into the cash flow after debt service, right? So that's basically that 110 difference. So when you see cash flow after debt service, it's the third line. That's effectively that 10%. Okay? And the reason why I show that is because I think it's important for you all to, when you do borrow, and I've had this conversation 4 times today at the Government Finance Officers Association conference about, hey, what's the balance between cash and debt? And it's a delicate one, but the reason why I'm showing it this way is because I also want to show some building of a fund balance as well. Because the question earlier about an escrow was a good one. There is no escrow. What I would recommend is that we add that excess cash flow to your fund balance. Okay. What is that $3 million number? That is a conservative number I was provided for a potential asset sale of the towns. I have not done any due diligence on the accuracy of that number. That was an input I was given. I thought it was appropriately conservative, and so that's what's reflected in there. And one way you can use that one-time cash infusion is you can use those funds to help stabilize the rate impact to users. Okay, and so that's why you have 2 monthly impacts at the bottom of each cash flow. One without stabilization, one with. And again, this is an illustrative exercise. I'm not being prescriptive and saying this is how it has to look and this is it or the highway. This is purposefully structured so you guys can see, hey, what's the impact of $100,000 to ratepayers? Okay. So what I do is I assume that $100,000 comes out of that $3 million over a 27-year period. You don't have to do that. I'm just trying to show you the impacts to it. Okay. We'll be making final decisions soon enough, but I think this exercise is very important for you guys to understand the impacts of some of these mechanics. Okay. The same thing, something didn't show up on this particular printout. I don't know why it is, but I did an average monthly cost for each option. And since it didn't show up on your printouts, I apologize. I'll ask you to write these figures down. For the PDA leverage loan, the average monthly cost without stabilization is $69.79. For the bank option, it's $69.88. Pretty close. And with stabilization, they're within 14 cents of each other as well. So, again, just showing we may not need rate stabilization. I just wanted to show you how it all works. And with that, I'm happy to address any questions, comments, feedback.
With that conservative 3 million, are you assuming like no cash management policy that's not earning interest or anything? It's
Correct. I'm being very conservative. Yep.
okay.
Well, actually, no, I take that back. I am growing excess cash flows at like 1.25. So pretty low annual interest. You guys will be able to get more than that, certainly over the next couple of years. And 125, I mean, that really represents interest rates from 2020. It's really conservative, but that's where I prefer to start. Good question.
We got $1 million grant that we're able to use for this water plant. Is that factored into this?
It is not. And that brings me, I was hoping one of you would tee me up for this, so I appreciate that question. So since I shared these numbers with staff to share with you, council, you know, I am understanding that there is some portion of fund balance that's available to help pay down this obligation. Those are not assumed in this analysis. I want to start with the worst case scenario, okay? Because I'm not a pessimist, but I'm a realist. And so for me, that's the safest place to start. With that said, I will absolutely consider fund balance buying down the cost of this project. What I won't let happen is that fund balance getting to a really low number where I'm worried about the sustainability of the fund. All right, because that's also my mission, right? I don't, you guys don't want to borrow. We have to borrow for a big capital project. And so I want to make sure that, hey, if we can buy it down, great. And if we will, we'll do that. But I won't do it at the sacrifice of your liquidity, meaning fund balance. I do think it's prudent to keep a certain percentage of your annual expenditures as unrestricted fund balance. It's something that some of my clients have in policy. It's also something that a lot of my clients do in practice that's not in policy. So I typically see a range of fund balance between 20 and 40% of annual budgeted expenditures. That's kind of the target range I've seen with my clients and others. And so for me, there's a balancing act there. I don't want to draw down our cash reserves too much, only for us to wish 2 years later that we had kept some of that back. So what I will tell you is that if there are funds to buy down this project, let's use them. Let's use them. Let's not borrow as much money as 12 million. I'd prefer that for you. I'm sure you would too. So, but it's a good question and not part of this analysis.
Now, also, state revolving funds has a program that they say debt forgiveness on. Like they'll give you a loan and they can do debt forgiveness. I know we're tough because we're not a disadvantaged community. But one thing we do have going for us is we have such little ratepayers to cover such big debt that is a little key to the puzzle too.
Absolutely. And, you know, for me, formalizing my final recommendations, I think we'd like to circle back with you in 2 weeks with some more concrete numbers. I'll have a lot more of my assumptions for the PDA financing. And I will tell you that we're having a very instructive, informative meeting next week with HDR and Paul Young. That's where, you know, we can put out all this on the table and get a lot more specificity for you. Because I think with a January 5th application deadline, it's a timely discussion and a timely decision.
Now, with that deadline, we apply for it and say, you know, we're approved. We're not locked into that. I think me and Rob looked the other day. This is just to give us the approval, but it doesn't lock us in. Like say June, we decide to go another option or another avenue to finance it besides the state revolving funds, but they approve it. We're not locked in, are we?
I'm not to my knowledge, but that is a very important item. I will confirm, because if I were to give away a portion of my recommendation, is let's apply on January 5th my process with a direct lending arrangement, that's certainly non-binding, but it will give us a really good idea of, hey, February, we should look at, hey, what does the PDA think their rate's going to be? And then I can go out into the market, determine what the bank rate will be. And I think that's where we'll end up really making a final decision, is somewhere at the end of February, early March is my guess, right? It all depends on CDPHE coming in on time, because we can't really do anything until they approve it. So that's a factor I can't control. What I can control is I know that I can get a really strong indication of what the direct lending arrangement will cost in that first quarter. And I think, if I confirm that you can pull out of the PDA, then we have, a potentially tough decision to make as a group, as your municipal advisor, in that February, early March timeframe.
I have one more question, then I see Earl has his hand raised. We're hoping a 2-year plan at the best. It isn't going to be able to be done in 1 year. We end up getting the state revolving fund money, which is initial, pretty much a grant, not a grant, but a bond. Do we start paying on that as soon as we actually collect that?
Great question.
The reason why I'm saying that is because we're going to have a water plant that's being built. We're going to have a loan that we're going to be paying on.
Yep.
And I see it being on the private market, you go to a bank, you get the loan, you pay on it as you get it. Like you say, the first year we use $2 million to do dirt work. The following year, then you're only paying on the money as you're using it, not all up front. And that's kind of a big concern of mine.
Sure. I can't see who's asking that question, but I really appreciate it, because with the PDA, as far as I understand it and have always understood it, you pay interest and principal on the full amount after the first payment after closing. Whereas with a bank option, you're describing what we call a construction draw feature, where you're basically approved for a dollar amount by the bank. It's like a line of credit, but not really. It's definitely a loan for the amount you need, but you're only paying interest on the amount you've drawn to date. And so that can save on some significant interest costs. It can. I'm not immediately aware that a draw feature is available with the authority. Excuse me.
Thank you, Troy.
Sure. Mayor.
Well, you answered my question before you got to me. So I'm good right now. So my original question was I wanted to have a clarification that we have to have CDPHE in January 5th.
Well, we'd like it as soon as possible, right, Mayor?
Yeah,
so
right. Yeah. Okay. You haven't known of anybody talking to a DOLA representative to see if we can arrange an earlier review, if it's still, because last time we checked in, they hadn't even looked at it.
Right. So I think, Mayor, part of my follow-up inquiries are, all right, how we looking on the application? What can I do to help? And I need to confirm that point among others with PDA. There's just a lot. And because it's the leveraged loan program, there's just a little more rigidity because they sell bonds in the market and then loan those proceeds out. They have other programs that aren't the leveraged loan, but your project cost has to be below $3 million. Anything above $3 million, you have to do a leveraged loan. And so, for me, again, I want us to have a plan 1A and a plan 1B. I do that with all of my clients. I don't like surprises, but I expect them. So that's kind of been my approach with all of this analysis. I understand there's going to be sensitivity to the monthly impact. So for me, I put myself in the shoe of a user. Let's get that number down as low as we can.
So we've been watching the Federal Reserve. They've cut the prime by what, a couple of quarter%.
Yep.
And how does that affect the interest rate if they continue to do that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mayor. So every time the Fed cuts rates, basically, I mean, guys, the credit markets, car loans, mortgages, bonds, a dozen other forms of borrowing are all impacted by that Fed's rate. And so as soon as they cut, bank funding goes down bank rates go down very quickly. And then that decrease trickles out through those other different markets. So yeah, I think we want more rate cuts. What I am understanding about December is that because the federal government shut down, we haven't had enough data released. And so now, because there's a lack of data being released, I don't think the Fed's going to cut like we thought they would in December. And so now we're looking at February or January for their first cuts. But yeah, we want more cuts, Mayor, because that'll lower the cost of borrowing.
You did get that contact information, Troy, that Rob sent you on a local bank that was wanting to give us a bid on it?
Yes, sir. So I appreciate you also mentioning this, because for me, I have my list of contacts and relationships, but I always like going to folks that you guys want to have or want to give an opportunity to. So I very much appreciate that. And if there are any other names that aren't on my list, I'm happy to add them.
Great. Thank you.
So I think I'll go in line. We'll go back in line somehow. We'll figure it out. My main question is, I guess, around the $3 million and the timing of all this, because I think we're all kind of hopeful. We're going through this whole process. I don't know if you were on earlier, right? Like we hired.
I saw it on the agenda.
Yeah, we hired a firm to try to market a property. And we had some initial discussions in the higher than $3 million range. I think some goals around that, right?
Yep.
And I guess I'm curious, like just looking at $3 million and then you're, knowing where you are in the amortization scale, like you're still paying a ton of interest on this thing if you're just dropping $100,000 basically like our base rebate on there. The total cost of the loan doesn't really go anywhere, and I know you can do some stuff. I guess I'm you mentioned it. My goal is to get that monthly impact back to zero, like
yes, yeah,
or as close to zero as you can. So I guess like my questions are between the two. I don't see much difference. $3 million comes in, looking at this schedule, like $10 is $10 and $8, but I don't think people are gonna worry too much, and it's almost like we'll just keep that money or not sell property.
Right.
If $12 million comes in or $10 million comes in, what kind of impact does that have?
Well, there's the dollar amount, and then there's how you choose to spread it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Tom and I talked about, and like we kind of ran some scenarios of like spreading it over 5, because I said, Tom's like, why don't you run a theoretical of getting us to zero and say we got 4 million? I think we get 5 years at zero. So it's kind of like whatever the council wants to, what is what we get, and then how you spread.
Well, I guess my question is more between the two different choices of funding.
Yeah.
Versus the bank loan and some flexibility.
Yeah.
If we were to get 10, can we pay off most of that and then get another dollar loan and kick down the road 30 years or 20 years, and then you're back to $10?
Yeah, I love the conversation. And I love the question.
To me seems like that to me like pushes it very firmly in the category of going through a bank for the flexibility, because like I know a lot of companies who are not flexibility facing the possibility of getting some money for this, and at $3 million, like just looking at that kind of impact, you're like, we'd probably actually just put that in, try to earn some interest on it and do that.
Oh yes,
$1,000 thing, and just earn some interest on it, and then keep that $3 million balance in the enterprise fund for a rainy day or infrastructure.
Plus the cost of not having to buy American brings it down another 900,000.
Yeah, I mean, and then I guess that was my other question was overruns and underruns. So it sounds like I'm just gonna call it BDA loan because that's a long string. You take out 12 point whatever, 12.9, you're stuck with 12.9 for 10 years. Whereas
Correct.
if we figure out that, you know, our crew can get out there and do some earthwork and find some significant savings or whatever, you could just not take out that extra million or 2 million or whatever it is. And I guess the question is like the other way, like what happens if you have a big old overrun and you need to find an extra $2 million? The bank, obviously, you just keep going up. Like what are the options with the PDA loan if you define it?
So that's one of my follow-up inquiries with PDA is, but so for me, all right, the PDA sells these bonds into the public bond market, and it could be 10 investors across the nation. It could be 50. And I imagine that the PDA is probably sensitive to the debt load for a community of your size, for a user base of your size. And so I'm currently assuming that you're going to have a little more rigidity with the PDA, because when you're dealing with a bank, you're dealing with one investor. And if that lender is more like a real partner on the project, and so they're going to look at it and say, all right, we've got a cost overrun. Do we extend them additional credit, or how do we find a solution to the issue at hand where it's going to be much more difficult to negotiate additional debt with the PDA given their process? You know, if there's a cost overrun with the bank, we go to the bank and sit down with them. And I do think that's meaningful because you're only dealing with one lender, one investor. And so for me, that's another attractive option. And what I can tell you is I presented both options with the 3 million staying in-house and drawing down on it, because that's your only option with the PDA. You cannot pay down debt with that 3 million. What I will come back to you with is a third option that shows the bank note getting paid down by whatever amount that is. So you guys can see what the monthly impact of that is. For me, based on my initial analysis, and now that I have more accurate user counts, at first I was a little concerned because the numbers were kind of eye-popping, right? And so, but once I got the more accurate figures, I thought maybe a payoff would be a little less valuable to you. What I do think is valuable to you is that in 3 years, you have the option. You won't have that with PDA. So, and I think that analysis is somewhat nuanced. It depends on what investment rates are going to be in 3 years. And it depends on what prevailing rates are going to be. So, for me, I think the option itself is worth a lot. I really do. And right now, if the borrowing, sure. No, please.
The last question is, I'm sure you all thought of this, but is there any world where doing like half with one, half with the other makes sense, or the origination fees just add up and it's too goofy or complicated? Where you take $1 million of the lower interest one and then try to go after?
Yeah, I would not recommend that. I would recommend going with one or the other. Just because PDA is going to have different requirements than a bank. They just will. And I'd rather not put that on staff to have to manage that. For me, that sounds like a real headache. And if we all want to deal with the requirements of PDA, I'm good with that. But at least then we can kind of prepare staff for that due diligence and administrative work.
You can just say no, thank you.
I'm sorry, I can be talkative at times. I had too much caffeine earlier today. I apologize.
So realistically, other than the COI and there's debate on the interest rate, as you noted. There really doesn't seem to be, in our case, much benefit to the PDA. True statement? You can simply answer yes or no.
As of right now, with the information I have, true statement.
Secondarily, to segue what Brian was talking about and what Rob brought up, we went through the WTB vote in the first place. One of the things we kind of promised was to attack the debt service on an annual basis. So if obviously one of the premises in regards to sales of assets, in particular real estate, obviously, back to the point of the assumption, I think it's more than just an assumption that the number of ratepayers in town in the next 5, 7, 9 out years will substantially increase. So if you're using that as a metric, back to the point of, we can shoot from the hip all day as to what that number is going to look like as far as principal from the sale. Just for planning factors, my intent would be to zero out the debt service on an annual basis, so there's no impact. And then obviously by the time we get to year 9, 10, we're looking at a different level of math, not the least of which we circle back around to the 3-year refi piece as well. Depending on that influx of cash, we may be able to just zero this thing out entirely and walk away. That's pretty
kind of a little dilemma though with growth being able to build this. We got to pretty much have this water plant done before we can approve anything.
Agreed. So that's why I'm saying
kind of
5-year, 7-year, 9-year metrics. So in the interim, while the plant's getting built out, and then you segue into the build piece, you've zeroed out the debt service. So then those numbers start to accrue. And oh, by the way, there's no guarantee this property's selling tomorrow.
Right.
Whatsoever. So that's all I'm driving at in regards to give ourselves a significant margin on the current residents across the board.
But with going with the state revolving fund loan, we're going to be paying that debt service the whole amount right up front. We're going to have that debt service that needs to be paid.
Sure. Let me revisit that. I'm saying whatever the loan is, say we take the bank loan, that debt service for that piece is what I'm talking about. That additional increase beyond current debt service, which is extraordinary as it stands right now. And this is something we're going to talk about obviously ad nauseam later. I'm just putting out that, at least from my viewpoint, the intent to use that principal funds that come from that sale would be to zero out the impact of whatever we decide upon that loan, with the anticipation that the math's going to look very different in 5, 9, 10.
Yeah. And you're going to have a few new ones that's on there.
Yep. That's all I got.
One other, not really Troy related, but I know we've applied for grants in the past and we've been told that it's tough, but it is probably tougher now. But I'd suggest getting a hold of Sustainable Strategies and having them see if there's anything we qualify. I know we talked the other day, there might be $1 million one out there. 1 million would make a $10 a month payment on everybody's rate, because when we did the water tank on 2 million, it almost raised at $20. So that if you got 1 million, that's still a $10 a month savings on your water bill.
I did talk to Deborah from Sustainable Strategies on Tuesday. The landscape is just not good for us right now. Like the one thing we did look at was EIAF, but Deborah's conversations with the state is that because of their fiscal situation entering next year, that they maybe have 3 million for the whole program, which really would be something that would make like a substantial impact. So
have we looked into any of the money that for online gambling and stuff that's earmarked
for water conservation? Mostly, I don't know if those funds are really. I can keep looking, but
using what Philip Roberts said that we need to look at. When I cornered him at the QQ meeting, he said that look at those avenues.
The other thing to think too, though, is with our timeline, we're kind of out of time.
Well,
if we enter
ready, and that's what they want. They want shovel ready.
Ready.
Well, we will be out of time is when we start building it. Once we're under construction, we're not going to get any more.
So I would say we have like maybe 5 months.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Which, given grant cycles, it's like
well, it depends on
whatever's in June
when they put it in, but I just think that we owe it to our residents to try to find every possible dollar we can, besides just putting the rate, the increase on their bill. I just think we need to turn over every stone we possibly can to find money to pay for this. I know everybody wants to do the same thing too.
We'll keep looking.
Okay, great. Yeah.
I did briefly consider rural development, but that kind of leads us down a somewhat uncertain road with federal funding. I asked them 3 different times for a timeline, and I never got a response. So that's not a promising thing, but I have looked at USDA rural development programs, and the fact that I couldn't get a solid answer on, hey, from application to funding, what is that average time period? And never got an answer.
Anything else from council as far as direction and guidance for staff?
I'd say just keep going the same, look at both options.
Okay, well, we will be back in 2 weeks on this and with better numbers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Troy.
Thanks so much, everyone. Really
Thank you,
appreciate
Troy.
the time. You're welcome.
All right.
Oh, happy Thanksgiving to you all.
Yeah.
I wanted to say that before I jump off. All right.
No,
You guys take care.
You too. All right, moving on to last and probably most fun one, Minturn shooting range.
So we've been looking at this. The mayor's really been doing a lot of the front end of the work of having conversations with the right people. And we had a meeting with Forest Service and the county manager several months ago now. And the county manager, Jeff Stroll, brought up, he's like, well, why don't you guys look at doing a managed shooting range like the one in Gypsum? And because basically, we're sitting there with Forest Service, they weren't really saying a whole lot, which is understandable. But then, Jeff brought that up and the Forest Service was like, yeah, you could do that. And we were like, well, what would that require? And they're said, well, you could submit a application for special use to run and manage it. We could ultimately look at giving you a land patent that would enable you to annex it into the town, giving you, police power and regulatory power over that property, as long as your intent was to, operate it, maintain it. That's an option you could look at. I think what's important about, and I know this has been an issue that's been discussed at this town for a very, very long time, and there's many communities in the state that are in similar positions. I think even before the political climate we're in now, trying to shut down a shooting area, a range in national forest is a very difficult thing to do. And generally the people that are successful offer an alternative. And I think, Gilpin County, Clear Creek County is probably the best example that they, spent almost $1 million and built a shooting range outside Idaho Springs. And they were able to get a closure of certain Forest Service areas to just open shooting. Boulder County was also part of that, but they never identified a location, never acquired a property. So the Arapahoe Forest that's in Boulder is still, there's still open shooting permitted there. So I guess what we're looking for today is just some feedback from council. I think we have some people here too that are interested in this issue. I'm sure it'd be great to hear from them. I think if the council and the community is interested in having staff put in time on this issue, I would hope that it's in a productive direction, because the one avenue I think where we could be productive in dealing with the issue is taking the lead. And taking the lead means our time, our money, our effort into managing the range, improving the range. I think other endeavors in this current climate with the Forest Service would be quite difficult if we're not willing to take that on. I think there could be some opportunities too for funding from, the state, the county, and the feds to support investments in the shooting range that could improve its manageability, reduce its impact on the surrounding community. And I think it does have a good tie-in. The bike park is almost surrounded by federal land. We do seem to have some rec management issues over there. And I think it could be part of a larger plan to have the town take the lead on managing rec. One of the things about the Federal Explorer Act that was signed in January, before President Biden left, it really pushes the Forest Service to engage in more public-private partnerships with local governments, for-profit companies, to have them help manage public land. So I think, we could start off with, let's look at what we could do just for the shooting range, but over time, I think it could evolve into something that would benefit the community largely, about maybe expanding the bike park on federal land, managing the trails, and dealing with the issues that, Tom spoke about with fire mitigation. So that's kind of the summary there. And I guess we're just looking for direction if that's something the council supports us spending our time on. If you have feedback and direction for us on how we look into this.
Yeah, any idea how much time it would take? I know it's tough to know.
A special permit?
No, as far as like staff being able to kind of manage it, and as far as, upkeep and.
After we obtain special permit?
Yeah.
I think it depends on how we decide to do it. I think if we do it as part of, under our current, where we are today, I think we're pretty limited as far as our capacity. I think we would need to explore, okay, how can we partner with the sheriff's office if we get a special permit and we have regulatory control? Because I think we'd probably go to them and say, hey, like, as part of our ask for the services that we pay for, one of the things is if we have issues and there's a complaint, we need a response. I think during, obviously during the daytime hours, it may be a little easier for us, but I think ultimately the long-term goal would be, and we've discussed kind of what we'd like to see on Parks and Rec is, and that's why I like that the bike park's over there, because if we were able to get a larger plan and put some resources in, we could probably have some type of staffing or some type of partnership with an agency like BVMTA that has kind of eyes on the ground over there, maybe not 24/7.
They cleaned it up last year too,
Yeah, I think ultimately, and I don't know who was I talking to about, maybe we had a conversation, maybe we were talking about it earlier this week about, turning it into kind of how the Gypsum one runs, where it's a club, maybe it was me and Tom, and there's a membership structure, and we kind of build that up, where it starts to become a little bit more self-sustaining, I think would be our hope. I think it just comes down to putting together a plan that would work, and then seeking, the community's feedback, and then looking for help from partners like the county, the state, and the federal government.
I think some sort of club system, like you look at Gypsum, for a variety of reasons. Number one, you've got multiple people invested in the property, maintenance of the property, safety on the property. Two, you start to generate a revenue stream that zero out the costs associated with that. And ultimately it becomes more regulated. Because obviously the major complaints that are all listed in here in regards to unregulated shooting, after hours shooting, accelerants, other just dumb stuff, and obviously the fact that BVMTA has to come in there and do cleanup on Prascall is ridiculous. So I don't think a scenario where we're looking at it being incumbent upon staff in Eagle County Sheriff's Department beyond the obligatory drive-by, because the times we've had to call them in regards to issues out on the range, most recently the fire conditions, which is another item that is kind of near and dear to our heart. If we take over full management based on these agreements, we don't run into this issue anymore when we're at a red flag status. We own it, we shut it down. There is no lengthy debate or delay waiting on the Forest Service to do anything. So I know a lot of folks are on board with just trying to shut it down entirely. I just don't think that's realistic. And personally, I don't want to shut it down, but that's my opinion. But that's also predicated on correcting the deficiencies, of which there are many. I think a club aspect, we lived in Germany, every village had a Schützenplatz, same club system, works pretty well. I know there's a lot of avid shooters here within the county that would take vested interest in that. I think
that'd be ideal. I think it sounds like the Forest Service had spent a lot of time trying to find people. They contacted Gypsum, they contacted the NRA, they contacted everyone they could find, trying to get some of this. And it's funny because like I was part of, not the very beginning, but the VVMTA came from a bunch of us who just liked going out on trails, and we decided that we needed more help taking care of them, and we just drank beers in a bike shop and talked about how to do that. And it came from literally us out there like digging, and then all of a sudden now we're running OHD programs, doing all this sustainability stuff, just like it takes true grassroots users who are passionate about this stuff and just step up. So if anyone knows anybody, please step up, because that's like what we've been begging for, I think, for 5-10 years in this area as a group, to come out and actually take ownership. I mean, like Dusty knows it from snowmobile clubs. Like, they wanted grooming, they got together, raised money, bought a groomer, groom trails, like that's how this works. So that would be ideal. I'm not, I haven't seen it happen yet. I still hope there's people maybe doing it. But I would just like say my main concern on that whole area is fire. So any solution should come with the ability to close down during periods of high fire danger. I think that's like no question. So much has changed since that thing got put out there. Like, Vail Resorts is running big summer operations. We're getting longer, drier summers, etc. Quick input on the managed rec area idea. VDMTA did go through quite a detailed master planning, kind of like trails and kind of like vision doc from intern. There's some big problems with this area, not least in that that's a lot of winter range for elk. That's like a very sensitive wildlife habitat. It's steep terrain, it's rocky. There's a couple of trails that come down through there. I think in terms of like managed rec area, we from a board at VVMTA, from conversations we've had with the Forest Service, a lot of different partners in the community, we'd love to focus some trail development on other parts of the community, like Meadow Mountain. There's a lot of talk about. There's some different things. So I think that particular area for like a master expansion of the bike park and things like that, I don't really think most of the trail community sees that as a priority. I think CPW would probably agree with that. I think we would love to see a connection of Tualatin Creek across to Malloy, and kind of get people out of that shooting range and get rid of kind of the camping and trailhead user conflict going on over there. There's like dogs getting out of the trail and running into the shooting range and all that kind of stuff. But I think, in long term, I think that the solution is if we can find a way that we can manage it. I don't want the town and the people in the town paying tons of money to manage a shooting facility. I would love a group to come up and fundraise and get that thing going. But I think any solution, I love the idea of us being able to send the sheriff or call the cops over there to enforce nighttime shooting, illegal shooting activities, and to maintain a proper closure when we're in red flag type situations, because the Forest Service has shown that they aren't going to do that. So that's where I stand on the whole thing. Sorry, I'll get off.
Yeah, and what we're trying to do here is get y'all's direction, obviously. But if we have direction to move, if we have direction from council to go ahead and move and start researching and applying for grants and getting the Forest Service to participate with us on this, and the NRA has been mentioned that they have a generous grant fund. And certainly if we go to them saying, hey, we're trying to save a shooting range, but everybody wants to shut it down, then I think that's a good way of going about it. But if the other issue is the noise problem. And if we can get the funding, we could do, there's no way we can stop all the noise. It's just not going to happen. But we can at least lower the decibel level. We can limit the type of high power rifles that create the loudest problem, and those kind of things. So there's things that we can do to lower the impacts for the people down south of us in Southtown, and also up here, because when they're shooting those high power rifles, they echo all the way up throughout the town. So there's opportunities to lower the impacts, get control of it, get rid of, control the hours. Jeff Schroll said that the gypsum, I asked him about how much the county pays for the gypsum range, and he said hardly anything. It just takes a guy just keeping the signs up and cleaning out the shell cartridges and mess, all that, and it happens. So I don't know if it's going to be much of a drag. We'll have to find out as we further investigate this. But I think I was approaching it 2 ways. One, first, try to get rid of it. In our talks with the Forest Service, they say, well, if you want to wait 10, 12 years politically, maybe it's possible, maybe not. But the other thing is get us out of the situation where we were in last summer, where it was so dry that it was just pretty scary stuff. So I want to make sure that we prevented any chance of anybody going out there with tannerite or whatever they like to blow up, and we'll if we have to put up security cameras, forensic cameras to identify cars and so forth in time frames, and maybe there'll be a grant for that. So we'll work on that end. But that's kind of where I'm at.
Well, if we go the full autonomy route in regards to the noise concern, particularly speaking from the military side of the house, you just put up soil berms on the backside of the firing line. It's not going to get rid of the noise entirely, particularly as far as echoing off the cliff line. However, lateral noise, particularly in the adjacent neighborhoods, will be dramatically reduced. And that, I think, would be easy negotiation with the Forest Service.
Sure.
Anybody in the public want to discuss or share thoughts? Name and address for the record, please.
Yeah. Hi, Deb Davis, 1796 Main Street. I think most of you know, I was on the shooting range committee for, I think it was 3 years, maybe 4. And then the key part involved in the Keystone Committee, where we paid Minturn and the county chipped in to study this through, and we spent a year. Their conclusion at the end of the year was that we were supposed to go out and look for people to step up, as you were talking about. And I know the Forest Service spent time on it. I think the town spent time on it. People didn't step up, and nobody from the shooting community stepped up. And we experienced that when we cleaned up out there. When we were on the committee, we went out monthly and cleaned up. The first cleanup, we had a good turnout from the shooting committee, but then that summer, I think we had 5 or 6 cleanups, monthly cleanups into the fall. And after that first one, maybe we had 1 or 2 people from the shooting community. It was mostly committee members, council members, some county commissioners, we had the backcountry rangers. So I don't have a lot of faith. I'd love to see the idea like the Mountain Bike Club or the Snowmobile Club, where the community takes ownership, but we just haven't seen it. So I don't have a lot of faith there. One of my other concerns is I can't envision how you're gonna police this and control who goes in and out of this range because of the road having to stay open to the trailhead. So you can't put a gate there, as far as I know, unless maybe you reroute the entrance into the range somehow and so that you're not entering from the Forest Service road, because I don't think they'll allow us to gate it. So then if you put up cameras and you're reading license plates, then it's up to us or the sheriff to police that. And I know from the response we've gotten from the sheriff in the past, when we've had explosives out there, we've had people shooting in the middle of the night or at 3 a.m. They can't get there in time because they're not here. They're in Eagle or they're out on a call somewhere else. And they want to respond. It's not that they don't want to. They reply and they take us seriously, but it takes them an hour to get there. And so I don't have a lot of faith in the policing and the management of this. I can't picture how it's going to work. Maybe it could work. And those are my main concerns. Thanks.
Thank you.
Rob Davis, 1796 Main Street. I am skeptical about developing a for a couple reasons. I think that having a partnership with the county is a two-edged sword. If we develop it, you're going to make a higher demand, just like has happened. In 73, NEPA was passed. In 92, that shooting range was put in, and they did not ask for any public or town input on the pertaining to the impacts of that place. And I don't know how they sidestepped that, but they did. And as soon as 92 rolled around and that went in, all of a sudden it just wasn't us midterm people going down and shooting targets. It was people from all over the county, all over the states, and the Forest Service felt that they did a good thing, and they didn't consider the impacts before they did the improvements to that range. So I'm skeptical in a couple ways. I think it's going to increase the demand. We're going to have more and more people that are going to want more and more lanes put in. Berms are going to be like putting berms behind there on the side isn't going to do much. The only way you can quieten that place down is by limiting the decibel level, by limiting it to subsonic ammo and the grain size of the cartridge. And believe it or not, there is shooting that goes on down there. I live like 500 yards away. That would be acceptable, and they're all subsonic ammo, and they must. I'm not sure of the grain size, but lower grain size cartridges. And if we do end up developing it, I'd rather have the town making all the decisions and the people in the town making all the decisions. And I know for a fact that if you limited it to subsonic ammo and grain size, a lot of people would change their firearms for that limited shooting range. For one thing, they thought it was before they put in that range, they knew that there was a high pressure gas line right through the middle of it. And nobody talked to Western Slope that I know of to get an easement. God forbid there was like a leak and there was a fire. Who's going to be responsible? They need to, indemnify the town in case there is a leak and there is a spark. And we all know that, the Forest Service study in Wyoming confirmed that, yes, even a .22 caliber slug could ignite fire. So I think it was originally ill-conceived and poorly designed, and only catered to a small segment of the population. And I feel that we had our public rights disenfranchised because the town, the citizens, and interested parties, people walking their dogs, people running, bike riding, and all that, they had no say. So I would like to keep turning over those stones and go back to the Forest Service. They should be here tonight. I know there's a solution, and I was, being on the committee, I found many places nearby that were suitable for a range. I know that they looked at BOCO and the BLM said, no, we're not doing it here. But there is a feeling that many of us on the committee that felt like nothing was good enough for the Forest Service. And I think that's just wrong. So if I feel like we got to go back and say, get our lawyer to give us some advice. Can we go back and request the documents that they used to build that shooting range without a public involvement?
Technically, I think it was there before they even said it was a shooting range, because in the 70s, that's where we used to go shoot our guns.
Absolutely. But how many people from Iowa were there?
There wasn't. Back then, it was pretty much locals. That's all they knew was go up there, go
absolutely,
take your gun in and come home.
Yeah, it was minimal.
Mm-hmm.
But now, there's people vacationing here, and they call the Forest Service. Say, where can I shoot my gun? Well, they give them directions to the Two Elk shooting range, which, as far as I know, was never officially a shooting range. So I've never seen a document. So I'm willing to do everything, but I need to have the Forest Service and the outside communities look to us for advice instead of us having to beg the county sheriff to come down at 3 a.m. And I welcome this decision. I just think that the Forest Service said they were going to go dark for a little while and come back and tell us what they think they should do. They're going to keep trying to find somebody, they said, and if they can't, they left me with the idea that it may have to be closed, and we'll do that. In 2005, they were really close to closing it down because of the environmental trash that was there that is still there. So they, based on why they were going to shut it down, they can shut it down.
My fear of them shutting it down totally is it's not going to shut down the people from shooting them, because they can, the way the law's written is they can go 50 feet, I think it is, off a public road or whatever and shoot.
Absolutely.
And that's scary too, because you don't know, if somebody does that during stage 2 fire restrictions, they light up Tiggle 1 and there goes our Highlands, there goes our water type, buddy. Anyway, it scares me the way the law's written, how you can actually go out and shoot your gun. And it just,
people do that.
You got to look at both things.
People do that now.
Yeah, it's not right either to do that, and they do it.
The simple solution is to, if you close it down, close the gate, move the trailhead to right across from the cemetery, and there's plenty of parking for hikers and bikers and the amphitheater lot. That's 0.7 of a mile from the amphitheater.
Yeah, it's not that far. But technically, the way the law is written, they could still go carry their gun up there and go shoot it, and then it's tough. I mean, they really need a good designated shooting range. I got on that committee with you guys at the end, but Terry got off, and I was a little disappointed with their outcome. It just seemed like, this is what we come up with. We'll find a group to run it. And then it ended, and I agree. Nobody stepped up to run it. It just seemed like that once they gave the recommendation, it was over, and nothing ever materialized after that. It just kind of died out.
And I feel like partnering up with any entities, and especially having the NRA in on it, which I don't have any feelings one way or the other towards the NRA, but what they feel is acceptable, it is not acceptable to me. And what should be acceptable is should be, if we go this route as concessionaire, we should have the main weight of decisions made by our council and us, not outside entities, which I don't know if it can happen, but I think it can.
Well, that's why, well, I agree with your skepticism. Your concept in regards to munitions, while valid, I would throw back, I'm skeptical because yet again, we can put that regulation in place. How are you going to police it? So sure, I can put it there. Now, how am I going to enforce it? On the berms, unfortunately, back to autonomy. Would you prefer to have full autonomy over the range or defer to somebody else? From what you said thus far, you want full autonomy. So these aren't perfect answers, but it's a start. We have the range. We're stuck with the range. The current situation is not sustainable. So what do we need to do? Step one is look at taking over full operational management. From there, just as Gussie said, and as you guys thankfully served on the committee, got it. We need to look at it again and look at other ways to manage the range, whether that's within the town, within the county in regards to interested parties on a more formalized manner, i.e. volunteers coming out to clean up isn't clearly going to get it done. It's not.
Amen to that.
Right. So we're all in violent agreement on this, but step one is to take control of the range. At the bare bones minimum is during fire season. If nothing else was accomplished, we have full control over when that thing opened and closed. And to your point in regards to whether we limit access to the range, particularly when we say it's closed, there are a myriad of ways to adjust that firing line to shut it down. And on top of that, when it's shut down, on top of what was brought up in regards to the county sheriff's department, that's when you put out to them, hey, during this period of time, we have a requirement for you to patrol this area for the next week, 2 weeks, etc. There is a very specific direct support requirement put to them, as opposed to, because the next thing they're going to get, if we make a call at 3 a.m. and he's down in Gypsum, somebody's ass is going to be answering the question as to why you are not supporting the direct support requirement we put in there in the first place. Those are just the step-by-step issues that we're going to have to deal with, because otherwise we're stuck with what you got, which clearly none of us are happy with.
We jump in to make sure that we're getting public comment from everybody. I feel like
Okay.
we've gone a little bit. Make sure that
Thank you for listening.
Yes. No, thank you so much.
Hi. Jen Pace, I'm at 1800 Main Street, neighbors. So they've pretty much touched on a lot of things that, and we're going to keep on beating this. But my point, two things is, yes, I'm for closing it down. I'll just say that straight up. I'm not a shooter, but I'm impacted by it. I also feel that if it's not there, or if it's regulated by Minturn, and there's a club or whatever, maybe less people will go. But the Forest Service is directing people there now. Like when I went a little rogue and I went there by myself, took a knife to a gun show. There are 6 guys with guns. The police came, whatever, but like they lived in Longmont and I don't know how they knew about it. None of them, it was during the stage 2 fire restrictions. It was really dangerous. I was tired of hearing it at like 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock, and I thought my house could possibly burn down. But I feel like the less people that our town has changed so much. The county has changed so much. I've been in the mountains for 30 years. There's so many more people coming here. So it's a different gun range than it was a long time ago. You know, you see people tell us like, oh, well, like you're tired of the noise, or you moved there and the gun range was there. And like, I get that for like the Davises, they've lived there, but like, it's different now. There's a lot more people. The Forest Service doesn't have to direct people to that place because it's not actually regulated. I'm sorry, I'm kind of going around, but I feel like if the town took it over, maybe if there was a club, there used to be a club, how was that run back in the day? Like, how did that impact and how did that look? I think needs to be looked at. And also the environmental impact. I mean, there's elk up there. When I first moved here, I would see like 40, 50 elk. And I didn't even know the gun range really existed when I moved into the Davis property 13 years ago. I didn't hear it as much. I didn't know what it was, but the significant amount of people that have gone there now, and the numbers that have gone so much. I don't see elk. I see like 5 elk now. I know that when Minturn North was being developed, I know when they were thinking about when Crave was going to do something, they did an environmental impact study. I feel like that should be done again now, or maybe revisited by the Forest Service or someone, because we have so much less wildlife from we did when I moved here. So That's where I stand. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you have anybody else?
Ed, more?
I have a question, if there's nobody.
Oh, we do have one person online, waiting.
Bill is waiting.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, go ahead online.
Hey, Bill Hoblitzel again, 262 Taylor Street. Thanks for this discussion, Council. I think a lot of your points are really well taken. To reiterate, Deb and Rob, I too served on that stakeholder committee and the facilitated group with Forest Service, the Keystone Institute, and other people for half a year to a year of our time. That seems pretty wasted. It's kind of been put out that the Dingle Act prohibits the Forest Service from closing their range, and that's absolutely untrue. What the Dingle Act prohibits the Forest Service from doing is beginning a NEPA process without a robust public process in place. And that's what Paula Peterson had initiated and asked the town for support to run this facilitated process. So we put up our side of the bargain with the Forest Service to engage in a robust public process. And since that time, they have more than what they need to take that and then begin a NEPA process with the cover they need to, meet their criteria and requirements under Dingle Act. They're just not. And we understand they don't have capacity right now, but that might be different in a year. That might be different in 3 years. And so I think the idea of full closure shouldn't be totally tabled, because at this point in time, they're fully reneging on, kind of commitments that they made to us at the time of that process. And that's just for folks in this room or in town that maybe we're not part of that or don't quite know all the history behind that. But that's where the Forest Service is with us, is totally backing off commitments that they made. And that's not to criticize Leanne. We understand she's got plenty of things going on, but that's the facts with them. So to Tom's point about being able to control it fully in fire season and everyone else's, I fully support that. I think a lot of people in this community think it's a South Minturn problem. I think it's important to know, wildfires move at about 5 to 10 miles an hour. That's about a 15 to 30-minute travel time to Taylor Street from the Forest Service under south wind conditions like we have in the summer. So I think it is very much a full town problem. And if people are thinking this is just an issue that, that Rob and Deb face or the Armisteads face or other people down in that neighborhood face, that's, 100% false. This is a full town safety hazard. And I think really getting at it aggressively is, to whatever extent we can, is key here. And I just want to thank everyone for their work on it.
Well spoken.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Earl, did you have something else? Oh, you're muted, Earl.
Can't hear you.
Okay, here I am. So thank you, Bill, Deb, Rob, Jen, and just a couple of things. The Explore Act, which was good in some ways and bad for us in some ways, put in the fact that you have to replace a shooting range in the area. And that was approved in December of last year. That said, also in winter, that whole place is shut down anyway. So we don't have to worry about, people going up there in the winter. Hopefully they don't do it. Of course, I don't know. Rob and Deb and Terry and all those folks down there are a lot more aware of what's going on. But regardless, I think we're all on the same page as far as trying to do something. This is the only option that I was more focused on getting something done before summer, because last summer was pretty scary. And so I'm hoping that we can go ahead and get moving on this. And I think we're ready to give direction at this point. Mainly because I'm on Eastern Standard Time, guys.
I have a quick question, if I can. My name again, Deb Davis, 1796 Main Street.
Thank you.
If we enter into this concessionaire or special permit, is that something we renew every year? Is that like a 5-year or 2-year? One of the things that worries me is that I'm gonna sort of feel like Minturn is having to clean up this mess that we had nothing to do with creating. And I don't want to enter into this, or I'm concerned that we could enter into this permit agreement and then be stuck with this mess forever. If whatever we try to do really doesn't solve the problem.
Rob, you want to take this, please?
No, or not.
Do you have any other questions?
No, that's it.
Oh, okay. I guess just for the staff perspective on this, I just want to be abundantly clear because I think there's still a lot of unrealistic expectations about the environment that we're in. But I don't, as you know, the person that's responsible for your administration and your staff, I don't want us wasting time on things that there's no point in doing. And there's no point in having conversations with the Forest Service about anything that happened in the past. There's no point in asking them in any favors. There's not a lot of a Forest Service left. And these people are very worried about their jobs. When you sit in a room with them, they don't want to say anything because something they say could help, that'd be the end of their job. And so that's the environment that we're in. And I just want people to understand that I don't really care either way personally what endeavor we choose, but if we choose to go down this route, I want people to understand it's going to cost our money and a decent amount of it. It's going to cost a lot of our time and we're going to be very committed to it, but it's the only option that will deliver something for you. Other than that, it's if you're tepid and you're like, well, I don't want us spending our money and I don't want us committing to it, probably the best solution would be to wait. But during the next 3 years, if you have a problem or a complaint and you call here, there's nothing we can do about that. You know, we could try, but you know, it's like there's nobody going to be picking up the phone. So I just want us to be very realistic. Like we're talking about a commitment and it's going to cost time and money. And as far as, you know, what we would be in the future, I have no idea. But it's not just a gun range thing, as all these communities in Colorado in the mountains know. Increasingly, these public lands are not managed by the federal government, and everybody has to step up with their money, their time, and their people to solve these problems. You know, so if we come into this like, you know, well, we get the Forest Service in here, and you guys better take care of this. It's like they don't care. You know, it is our problem, unfortunately. Hopefully, the environment will change, but even if it did in the next administration, it will take 2 to 3 years for that to, you know, trickle down. So I think I just want us to be very practical.
Well, to that point, per Deb's question, the 2 key items are the special use authorization and then the land patent for the managed area. What
Yeah.
Is that an annual cycle?
I think it depends on the complexity of the permit. So some permits, like for Vail Resorts, that's a special use permit. You know, it runs for years at a time. So it just depends on the complexity of the permit. They said that because if it's just, we're just taking over simple management of it, so just the baseline approach, you know, they said the cost would be limited and they think that it's something we could do in a month's timeline.
Sure. The process, I'm saying, okay, we get it done and then we don't need to do it again for X amount of years. Based on everything you just said, Forest Service wants to do as little as possible. So I would assume they're not going to be opposed to us saying, well, we want 5 years, we want 10 years, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's not going to be an annual or fiscal year renewal process. True.
I think it depends on what your preference would be and where we start in those conversations. So if you would say, let's do a year.
Well, to your point in regards to waiting, I think universally everybody is opposed to repeating this past summer.
Yeah.
I think that's safe to say. So step one, as you just denoted, conceivably you can roll through this in a month or two. I'm going to say 3 months. It's the federal government.
3 months would be amazing.
Yeah.
I'd be like, wow.
But the 2 key pieces is special use authorization, and then the land patent.
That would probably take much longer.
Well, to that point with the land patent, because of the managed area and essentially policing power, true policing power over the site, I think ultimately that's what we want.
Right.
I'm speaking out of turn, but I'm simply stating that if we're stuck with this booger, so to speak, I want to have full control over it, particularly the ability to enforce. Period. Legitimate enforcement. not just finger wagging, or as Jen stated earlier, we're bringing a knife to a gunfight, high powered, I'm not even gonna get into it. 30 on 6, whatever. Bottom line is, I think short term, in regards to your concern about wasting time, I think we want to march down this road. What is it going to cost? That's a different animal. I would think at this current financial state, we want pretty low impact on that to start with, but starting the ball rolling concurrently with the land pack.
And I think the cost is proportional to the level that the problem gets solved. So it's like, we may not spend a ton of money right now, but it does give us some control. Over time, we may be like, okay, well, we can put this in and we would get this in return. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think ultimately the presentation of the Forest Service of here, we'll take this problem off your hands. I don't think they're going to run away from that problem fast enough. So that should be commensurate with minimal costs inflicted upon us from that standpoint.
Oh, I don't think they would inflict much cost. If you're talking about Forest Service inflicted costs, I think they said that they could waive the permit costs.
Fair enough.
The only thing that I would say that's come up is people have talked about restricting the type of ammunitions that could be used. I don't think they're going to like that. And that may be an area where we cannot promise you anything, but we can have that conversation.
Well, fortunately, a lot of these high-end shooters are all buying Blackout, which actually is quieter and subsonic.
Because Jeff Stroll said, like at Gypsum, like there's not those kind of restrictions. And sometimes people bring very large guns, but he said it's just part, he lives over there. He said it's just kind of part of the
They have long-range shooting, we don't.
Yeah.
Again, that's back to the burn piece.
Yeah. I just saying, like, they did say when we had that conversation about like restricting guns, it was kind of like.
The downside of building the sandbox is people want to play in their sandbox. The plus side is we dictate the size of the sandbox.
Right.
I think the biggest thing is having the control. If we go into stage 2 fire restrictions like we did last summer and they didn't shut it down for at least a week, at least we can shut it down.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would call Public Works. I'd be like, we'll take whatever we have out there and just block it off, you know? Whereas today, like, I guess we could do that, but we would see what wrath would come after us.
Control, we can't do that.
Right, not legally, no.
And they went around, and I know BVMTA helped. They tied and they put signs on every non-developed campsite in the a big one up everywhere. There's like pink stuff all over these like campfire rings. And there's just nothing. There's nothing over there.
So that's one of the things of, maybe it's not a year 1, maybe it's not a year 2, but maybe year 3, we're like, we're going to put some money up for a fence.
Yeah. We should look into, I didn't know about the Explorer Act provision. I just pulled it up.
If you read the Explorer Act, you're going to lose your mind.
I know, I probably will, but
it requires the federal government to identify every operating unit and have a shooting range.
Yeah.
So
it requires one, but that's the distance. So we're in a pretty Eagle River, the Eagle Holy Cross district is pretty big, and it allows them to work with other governmental agencies, including counties and stuff like that. So we might want to talk to Eagle County and see, hey, is there a way that you guys can help us identify a place to have a shooting range that, out of here? Because maybe maybe this can be a county problem and not a midterm problem.
I don't think anybody's going to take this problem for us. Nobody wants to touch a shooting range. It's like a landfill. Like nobody wants it. Nobody's gonna be like, yeah, we'll have that over here. Even if there's one house near that place. I just say don't go into it hoping that, because nobody wants this.
I think our best option is just us get control over it and take it with small bites. Not
we have
big.
I don't know. Yeah. So ultimately, for tonight's purposes, you don't need direction on these proposals.
It sounds like we want to explore.
Well, I've been mouthy. Everybody else on board?
Oh, I've been mouthy too. Probably too much.
I haven't been too much, but I support at a small scale.
It's just a frustrating environment with the federal government.
Full autonomy is always the best option.
Well, that's the beauty of local government. When the higher levels fail you, you can do it yourself.
Okay, you feel good about that?
She's like, what?
Yes.
He's looking at him.
My computer is going to restart in 56 seconds, so
Perfect.
I have nothing to add.
I think we're done.
I know what she's gonna ask.
You got direction?
Yes.
Any future meeting agenda items that we need to discuss otherwise?
I have one on the dates to be determined. We have a motion to approve the posting for the RFP for the Highlands. Can we take that off of there now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
I would just say the people that are interested in this issue, just like make sure you have my email so that we can tell you like when we're coming back.
Okay.
So we can just communicate clearly.
Thanks for coming out.
And I have Davis's email, but I don't know.
I know them pretty well.
Okay.
So that's how I ended up here tonight. Recruiting.
Take a motion to
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second by Tom, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That was a really good meeting.
Thank you guys for showing up. Thank you.
I know the best part was the budget.
Oh,